Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this month's edition of the Business Regeneration and Planning Overview Committee. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance. We're not expecting a fire drill tonight, and so if there's a fire alarm does sound, please evacuate the building as quickly, as calmly as possible. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once outside of the building, please gather outside Lloyd's Bank, which is on the opposite side of the road. Exit by door in which you entered the property. If you need assistance, please make yourself known to any of the offices available. Thank you very kindly. Please note that mobile phones could be turned off or turned on to silent. The meeting will be recorded for future viewings, but also on the live streamed. Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Phillips, Councillor Brown, who's being substituted by Councillor Hammersley. Thank you very much, Councillor Hammersley. And from Councillor Evans. Do we have any other apologies? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have a proposer for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Hartshorn. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Morton. Yes, Councillor Condacor.
Yeah, in the minutes it formally says we wanted clarification on psychoactive substances and alcohol public spaces protection orders. So I didn't want that getting dropped because we haven't been provided with an answer yet.
Okay, Councillor Condacor, thank you very much indeed. Marie, have you... Okay, we dealt with that? Thank you. That will be forwarded. Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Any other questions relating to the minutes? You all happy that I sign those off as a true record thereof? Indeed. Thank you. Okay, item 3. Item 4, declaration of interests. Do we have any declarations of interest that is not listed in the schedule currently from any member? No, in which case, thank you very much. Item 5, public consultation. We have a number of speakers, public speakers at this meeting tonight, so I'll continue to run the agenda as is. But I believe we have one speaker currently who wishes to speak under public consultation. Mr. Margrave, is that correct? It is. Or would you like to speak specifically on items? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Margrave. Item 6, we have questions to Cabinet. We have 2 members of the Cabinet here. Do we have any questions for those members? Thank you. Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much, Chair. First, I'd like to address a question to the Leader of the Council. At last night's Cabinet, we discussed very briefly the Bridge to Living scheme, which was marked down as being underfunded, and also there was issues with the flood alleviation scheme. Obviously, one of the things that might happen is that scheme gets descaled slightly to make it cheaper, and I was wondering whether there was a possibility to have an input or discussion on that in terms of actually making the gap for the river wider, which would help with both the saving money and descaling the scheme, and also whether it's possible that some of the shops we're trying to evict further down could actually be retained to make the scheme cheaper. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. We are still in negotiations or discussions with the Environment Agency, etc., so they will guide us in terms of any flood alleviation schemes, and that work is ongoing. Obviously, we're subject to different modelling, etc., and that is actually feeding through into work in particular about the flood zones, because the flood zones haven't been updated for a significant amount of time, and those are now being looked at. In terms of the, excuse me, I'm still a bit congested and bunged up, so I'm struggling a bit today. In terms of the actual scheme, that is still being continually actually financially assessed about viability, and where necessary scaling back whilst not trying to detract from the overall aim of the project. So that work is ongoing, but it's not yet ready to bring to open discussion yet, because there are still discussions being had with other partners which would be potentially commercially sensitive, unless Dawn, I think Dawn's online, isn't she? Unless Dawn has any further updates that I'm not aware of since we last spoke.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Condacor?
I'd just like to clarify, I am quite keen on the opening to be made wider, and maybe the river widened a bit there, because it is the pinch point and that could be an opportunity to save money, so I hope you'll take that forward.
It will depend on, Chair, it will depend on the overall viability of the scheme and what is achievable. That is the primary goal that we have to look at, is trying to keep it as close to the financial envelope that we have, given the tough financial constraints that we have, and of course the global economic crisis that we're experiencing, with increase in inflation, costs, labour, etc. We are also looking at things like phasing on how to deliver things and how that actually fits into the economic model too, because this isn't just a council discussion, this is a discussion with many different partners, so it is to an extent a movable feast.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Condacor, have you got another issue?
Yeah, well, just to find a bit on that, do we know where we are with the Department of Work and Pensions? Because it was reported that they were less than keen to leave quickly.
You in a position to answer that one?
I can't say anything publicly, Chair, because there are commercial sensitivities around that. So discussions are ongoing, and I know that Dawn and the rest of our officers are having discussions about that. Dawn has, but there are elements which are commercially sensitive, unless Dawn has anything she thinks can be revealed. I don't know, she's not. She's online.
Dawn, could you help us with that matter, please?
I can, Chair, yes, thank you. So, Councillor Wilson is correct in terms of the confidential nature of the discussions that we are undertaking. The West Midlands Combined Authority are also on board and are part of those discussions with us. In terms of any additional information that Councillor Wilson said earlier, when we are looking at the viability of the scheme, just to say that we have a meeting next week, I believe it is, in terms of a further viability assessment that's been undertaken. In terms of any redesign of the scheme, we have to be mindful that it is a requirement of the funding from the Future High Streets Fund to deliver a certain level of outputs and outcomes. That was part of the business case that was put forward. So any value engineering and remodelling, we still need to deliver those outputs, and that's where some of the discussions come in with representatives from the government.
Thank you, Dawn. I hope that satisfies your further question on the same matter.
No, I want a question to Councillor Smith.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I've got two questions for Councillor Smith, I believe. Last night it was mentioned there was a problem that we didn't charge for wheelie bins when we actually agreed to do it in 2019. Obviously it went to Cabinet back then in the Labour days and it was voted for, and I was a bit alarmed to see that Cabinet was being, or the Labour Cabinet was being blamed for that not being implemented, and I wasn't sure if we had a bit more information on where it dropped off and how, because obviously we've got operational decisions and operational matters, and then we've got political decisions, and somewhere down the line things have gone wrong. So I don't know if you can give us any gen on where it went wrong so it doesn't happen again.
Councillor
Yeah,
Smith?
actually, I don't have any information on that, and it doesn't sit in my portfolio either. It's not a planning issue, so I'll pass that on and make some inquiries about it. Get back to you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you for that. I think that might be where it went wrong. It might have fallen between, because it was a planning matter that then did environment, it might have dropped between the holes last time. My second question is about the new housing target for the borough. I really welcome the targets coming down, but nowhere near enough. And one of the key things that really upsets me is the economic modelling for the housing target, because they assume we'll create so many jobs, and then they'll assume that all those people are migrating in. So there's a travel element to it, when actually what we do when we create jobs in Nuneaton is we actually reduce the number of people migrating out. So if you create 100 jobs, you actually only need 80 more houses because 20 of those jobs go to people already in the borough. So I don't know if we're having, or you could arrange a meeting to discuss the new report from the consultants so we can get that discussed as soon as possible, because it is, a lot of these assumptions need justifying, and the commuting assumption is really, really bad for the borough. Thank you.
Yes, as always, I'm always happy to sit with you. I know how keen you are on these figures and how we have different views on migration figures, etc. It's very difficult. We're finding a balance. We need economic growth. We don't need too many houses in the wrong places. So it is a matter of balance. I know we have disagreements on that calculation, but I'm always happy to sit with you, and I'll fix a meeting up and go through it with you in detail.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Chair, but I think it might also be useful for the working group or the Borough Plan group to meet to look at it, because I don't want to just have a discussion with you, I want it shared. Thank you, Chair.
It will be discussed at the next meeting, which I think is scheduled for January 17th or thereabouts.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any other questions relating to the Cabinet members? In which case we'll move forward to item number 7, which is the regeneration in Bedworth Town Centre. We have the report from, is it from Dawn? Or from Tom? Are you with us, Tom? Oh, bear with us.
I am. Apologies, just getting my microphone.
Thank you.
Hello.
Chair, would you like me to take it forward? I think Tom's having some trouble with
If you would,
with
Dawn,
his
that would be
equipment.
helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report brings some information around the regeneration of Bedworth Town Centre. So the update that we have for you is around the activities that have been undertaken in recent months and the outcome of those activities. The key thing for us is to develop a sorry, I'm being told something on Teams. My apologies, Chair. Right. So the overall aim of this is to develop a suitable regeneration approach for Bedworth. And there are 3 key pieces of work that we've commissioned so far to help us establish a really comprehensive picture of the town centre and the broader challenges that it's currently facing. The pieces of work have been provided, which is the socio-economic review. The property market analysis has been sent around separately because there is some commercially sensitive information within that, and the town centre public survey that was undertaken. So in terms of the master plan, we have procured some consultants to develop some really high level and concept plans to demonstrate how we can deliver an ambitious and a visionary mixed-use scheme, and how that could fit in the town centre. Those designs are included within this report. The designs propose a mixture of residential and commercial units, the intention of which is to increase the footfall in the town centre, and a way to achieve that is really improving cultural spaces, food and beverage offers, and really bringing around an evening economy. So it's important to note that no final decisions have been made on the design of the site. The work's been commissioned following experiences learned from the Transforming Nuneaton programme, where it has been clearly identified that this type of work has to be there in order to start a conversation with potential funders, be they public sector or private sector. And the designs are there to provide an indicative representation of what could be achieved. Very similar to the way that Transforming Nuneaton has started. So the design's been developed based on the understanding about the challenges that Bedworth Town Centre faces. And it's also designed to accentuate the benefits of the park, improve the travel links through the park and through the town, but importantly to preserve character and enhance character within the town centre, such as the architecture at the Nicholas Chamberlain Arms Houses, mirroring that in a more contemporary way at the other side of the town centre. So this is only the first stage to delivering the long-term regeneration of the town centre, and the consultants and officers are mapping out what the next steps are to reach a project. They will include additional viability assessments of the site, and also more surveys that look at in more detail at the land ownership and any existing utilities on the site. This will require a significant amount of funding, and it will, as Transforming Nuneaton has done, require input from a range of sources, including private sector investment, as well as, for example, the combined authority. We meet with those regularly. Tom is part of those meetings, and we have shared with them these concept plans. They are very keen to support us where they can. They put us in touch with a separate arm of Homes England. Tom has been in contact with them, and they are looking to contribute some funds for the future feasibility and viability works for the overall Transforming Bedworth programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dawn. Anything to add on to that one, Tom, please?
Can you hear me? No, you can hear me. Good. Oh, great. Okay. Apologies. I don't know what happened with my microphone, but not really to add on that at all. No, I think that's very much summed up the Bedworth project there.
Thank you for that. We have a number of public speakers regarding to this this item on the agenda. So what I ask any of the public speakers to ensure they stick to the subject matter with regards to their questions, etc. Otherwise, I will stop those people speaking and move on. Thank you. We have... Where are we? Mr. Margrave.
Before I begin, and I know this isn't sticking to the subject matter, but can I just pay condolences to Diana Hawkes? She played a huge part in my life and others, and she will be deeply missed. Thanks to her and Bri, good or bad, I wouldn't be standing here today if not for them. So thank you, Di, for all you did for the community. Mr. Chairman, like many residents, this report recognises the strong offer, importance and value the Civic Hall brings to the arts, community and economy in Bedworth. The Civic Hall needs investment, not demolition. In respect of the drawings on page 19 and 18, can Councillor Evans or Councillor Markham tell the public when they were first commissioned and who by? This will explain when the Council first committed pen to paper to knock down the Civic Hall. This report, I am concerned, is deeply flawed, misleading and grossly out of date. The survey is from 2020 and based on different plans. Data is from 2011, despite new data being available. Working from home has also changed how we use and see town centres. If we all need more workspace, why not repurpose unused space in the Civic Hall to create an entrepreneurial space? The report says plans are a response to residents' wishes, but you've not asked them. So before the bulldozers come in, or any final plans are made, will the council undertake a proper consultation and hold public meetings in Nuneaton and Bedworth on the 12 aspirations, the sketches, the future of our town centres, and listen to the views of residents before you tear down our towns and turn them into giant housing estates? To understand if Bedworth town centre is getting its fair share, can you also publish how much council tax comes in from Bedworth and Bolkington, how much is spent by the council in the town centre of Bedworth? Because there aren't amenities there, such as the area office is no longer there, and you won't have the civic hall. And how that compares with Nuneaton, because it has, for example, the museum. Finally, Councillor Evans previously said it was fake news that the civic hall was closing, and at a recent OSP said there were no plans for demolition. Putting aside him having a report in November 2021 that had demolition and closure as an option, these plans clearly propose demolishing the civic hall. So, can you be honest that despite asking people to come forward to run the civic hall, this council is pushing ahead with demolition of the civic hall, and that isn't fake news? Thank you.
Dawn, could you answer the question regarding the original drawings, etc., for the town centre regeneration?
I can, Chair, but I'd have to check back in my records. I believe that information has been provided previously, but I can do that, Chair, and get it issued around.
Councillor Wilson, would you like to respond to any of those questions?
Well, it's a statement to the committee rather than questions to me. But in relation to the report which is mentioned from November 2021, Mr Margrave is indeed again misrepresenting that report. It presents a number of options, which includes keeping it in council ownership, putting it out to tender, doing nothing, or looking at a replacement. So there were a number of options contained in that report, and I believe it is misleading of Mr Margrave to say that. But I'm not surprised at that. In relation to looking at the regeneration of Bedworth Town Centre, I, as portfolio holder, asked some months ago to look at what could be done, and I emphasise could. It isn't a definite plan, it is a vision of what could happen. It may be that it is not within our financial grasp to do that. I don't know, but as Dawn said in her opening presentation, the first step is to look at the art of the possible, see what is possible on the site, and then work our way backwards to whether we can purchase property if we need to, what property is within our ownership, other financial modelling work which needs to be done. But there has been no commitment to demolish the Civic Hall. It is what is in the best interests financially of the council and Bedworth as a whole. If it works out financially we can't do what is in that paper, then we can't take it forward, obviously. But I am encouraged that having conversations with the combined authority, we are having some promising interest, I think it would be fair to say, from the combined authority. And indeed, one of the directives I gave to Dawn some time ago is that the priority for our work with the combined authority has to be Bedworth, because I am very acutely aware that Nuneaton is further ahead in terms of regeneration, and that Bedworth needs assistance to catch up, and that the combined authority can bring a significant amount of weight and influence to bear in terms of doing that, and indeed getting them involved at the earlier stage of regeneration and development may actually mean they are more likely to engage with us moving forwards, because obviously the earlier you start in a process, the more investment and ownership, not investment financially, but investment in terms of time and effort you are likely to give. If it proves that this isn't sustainable, then we will have to look at alternative uses for the Civic Hall. But I would disagree with Mr Margrave that having housing in the town centre is bad. Indeed, I think he said at a previous OSP, although I wasn't there, I heard it reported back, it would increase antisocial behaviour. I would say, where is the evidence? And he himself indeed has said, and has been said by officers, that town centres are changing, and that the way that people shop and live has changed, and that we need to move away from this concept of town centres always being shops or eateries or whatever, and being a mixed-use economy. That is the best way to get people into our town centres and increase footfall.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yes, indeed. Councillor Condon.
This bit's supposed to be That's okay. This bit's supposed to be public questions, and I'd just like Mr. Margrave to clarify what he meant about the Civic Hall possibly being demolished, because I think it's only fair that he's got the right to apply and clarify what he said.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. It's a strange old place, this, isn't it, where overview and scrutiny, and it's the cabinet member who's the one speaking at me. I would have expected overview and scrutiny members to ask me questions or engage, not for a cabinet member. You're meant to hold the cabinet to account. What a shambles this council is. In the words of Councillor Wilson, democracy really isn't at the town hall. But can I just say, what I meant is there are plans put forward that would result in the Civic Hall being demolished. You know, I just want some honesty and some clarity. I would like a timetable of discussions and decisions that were made around the Civic Hall being demolished. You know, I know now that the Labour Party were the ones who commissioned the report, but was there an intervention in between commissioning the report and the new administration taking over? Because I just want to know who was it that discussed and put forward to officers the idea of demolishing and closing the Civic Hall, because that's what this picture does. So if this is the direction the council's going in, it would see the Civic Hall being demolished. So just be honest about it. And, you know, if the community are coming together because they would like to run the Civic Hall with support of lots of people, you know, be honest that you're actually pushing these plans forward. I would ask that you put them on pause, you take a breath, you don't rush this decision, and that you do what's in the best of interest by holding a consultation, which you yourself have said you won't hold because people will tell you that they want the Civic Hall open still. You said that at Cabinet. And that's the problem. None of this has gone to local people. Officers mentioned clearly, and I will be quiet in a second, but officers mentioned clearly, you know, we need to listen to developers. We need to listen to stakeholders. What about listening to local people? You're not doing that, and that's what you promised to do when I voted for you. I won't be voting for you again, and I tell you there are lots of people out there who won't be voting, but I won't be voting Labour either. Thank you.
I don't believe as such there is a done decision made regarding the Civic Hall as such. So it's still a plan, potential plan, that hasn't been signed off as being the future at the moment. This is a development, potential development within the town. So to say that it's a done deal is incorrect at this moment in time. We have another speaker, Councillor Hammersley. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say a few words. We can all read. I'm sure Mr. Margrave can read as well. And it does say in the Regeneration and Planning Overview, no final decision has been made on the design of this site, and the designs are intended to provide an indicative representation of what could be achieved. It doesn't say what will be achieved. It doesn't say anything about knocking the Civic Hall down. This is consultation. We are looking at all avenues, and it all comes down to money as well, which Mr. Margrave is also aware of. And the project will be funded from a range of sources. It does say in there as well, from the West Midlands Combined Authority and Home England's to contribute the fees for the feasibility study. So no final decision has been made, no bulldozers have been mentioned, no knocking down has been mentioned at all. These are studies which we are doing to get the best outcome from what we have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hammersley. Councillor Cape.
Not working. Yeah, there we go. Actually, the hyperbole and the polemic that has just been vented by Mr. Margrave, saying that as a member of the Oversight Committee, I should hold people to account. No, I'm talking.
Mr. Margrave, please. Mr. Margrave.
This is questions of me as a member of the public, not scandalous statements and rudeness.
Mr. Margrave.
Sorry.
Mr. Margrave.
You.
I'm not going to be sitting
No.
people counsel it.
Yeah. Say less, do more. Actually, Mr. Margrave said that I wasn't doing my job by not holding people to account on oversight. He's made a lot of comments about decisions made back in 2021 when I wasn't even in politics, wasn't even in this council. So I cannot judge anything on what was done historically because I was quite simply not here. What I can do is look at the correct process and decision making that is done and base a judgment on whether or not the council has acted legally and according to the advice of the government and its officers. And from what I've heard so far this evening, gaining information about the best way forward, having learnt lessons in transforming Nuneaton, is totally appropriate. So rest assured, I will hold people to account, but also I don't particularly like it when broad allegations are made about my own capabilities.
Thank you, Councillor Cape. We have another member of the public to speak on this about Mr. Ellis, I believe. Are you with us? Yes, Mr. Ellis.
I'm just going to talk about the car parks. I totally agree with what Sam was saying here with the Civic Hall, but I'm just talking about the car parks. The report on page 82, community consultation, is a complete farce. The important questions are leading and create confusion. The result in predetermined council objectives. Question 4 on page 82 is leading. The second part to this question says, on underused areas in our town. This is not needed in that question. It inflates the result of the question to a predetermined council objective. A better question to ask would have been, do you want to replace the Bedworth Town Centre car park with residential houses? Question 5 on page 82 creates confusion. It says, with ground floor multi-storey car parking. This question mixes the two different concepts of car parks, the traditional concept and a multi-storey concept. A better question to ask would have been, do you want to replace the current Bedworth Town Centre car park with a multi-storey car park? Some history on multi-storeys in Bedworth. 1972 to 2000 was the Bedworth hypermarket. It was a 2-level multi-storey car park. By the early 2000s, the car park stunk of urine, had leaking ceilings, slippery road surfaces, and the car parks were abandoned and unused by the public. Similarly, Bedworth Tesco 1980 to 2011 was a 2-level multi-storey car park and suffered the same problems as a hypermarket, urine, slippery surfaces, also abandoned by the public. The Council have car park ticket data, probably in the archive. They can confirm that they were abandoned. The history of Bedworth multi-stories shows that multi-storey car parks have a shelf life of 30 years maximum. They require capital every 30 years to build replacements. They look ugly, they do not blend into the local surroundings. They deteriorate quickly. They are more expensive to maintain than traditional car parks. There's no natural cleaning from the rain. Supermarkets have stopped building them. People don't like using them and eventually abandon them after about 20 years when they become run down. People prefer traditional car parks that are in natural surroundings that fit and blend well into the local environment. In conclusion, the only point of a multi-storey is the more efficient use of land argument, which is only really relevant in large cities where land is scarce and more parking is needed. Replacing a perfectly adequate traditional car park like we've currently got in the town centre that does not need replacing with a concrete multi-storey is not necessary, a complete waste of public money, and will damage the appearance of Bedworth. Multi-stories in Bedworth have been a complete failure. Why is the council repeating the same mistakes of the past? And just finally, the report question skewing is a disgrace in the consultation. Thank you.
Once again, refer to the fact that the plans, the future plans for the town is visionary at this moment in time. So the fact that we're discussing multi-storey car parks or not, yes, it's on the plan at this moment in time, but it's not, again, once again, it's not set in concrete. At the moment, it's up for discussion, etc., and viability studies. Mr. Smith, oh, sorry. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, could I, is it in order for me to ask Councillor Wilson a question on the development of Bedworth Town Centre? Is there any suggestion that it's going to be nothing but a housing estate? Because if you listen to people talking now, that's what seems to be coming across. You've already said it's going to be mixed use, sir. Could you just clarify that again, please?
Yes, I can most certainly confirm it is mixed use. It would include an element of housing. There would be a new civic centre, including a new purpose-built civic hall theatre space, which is much more economical than the current one, and also more sustainable, in my view, than the current one. It would include a new library. It would also, subject to discussions with People in Action, have, if they want it, some element of accommodation for People in Action. There would be new, smaller shopping units, which we know from our own experience, particularly in Nuneaton, that smaller independent retailers want smaller units because the larger, old, traditional shop units cost a lot in terms of business rates, for example, when they actually don't need that particular footprint in there. And there is also a dearth of office space in Bedworth, which has been reported back to us as part of some of the works which Dawn was referring to earlier about the state of Bedworth, the economic state of Bedworth, that is. But what I would also point out in response to the car park question is there would be possibly a multi-storey car park, but I would also argue that times have changed since the old 1970s food giant car park, which was there. It was a 1970s carbuncle monstrosity. Development has changed since then, and if you look, the Bedworth Civic Hall is a 1970s era building, which again is, in my view, past its sell-by date because it is costing an awful lot to run. It will cost an awful lot to bring up to standard and will cost an awful lot more to keep going in the future. It's almost 50 years old. Buildings do, as was alluded to, wear out. The Civic Hall is no different. It is not some kind of Roman Corinthian plinth marble-esque building. It is, quite frankly, as with other buildings in Nuneaton and Bedworth, a 1970s carbuncle. And I think we should be aiming for something better than just staying in the past. We should look to embolden and envisage and have a vision for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Mr. Smith, I believe you want to speak on this item.
It says at the start of this that following the reports, the council asked some experts to do some replanning of Bedworth Town Centre. But I don't know who read these reports and decided that they'd have a clean slate, yeah, to draw those pictures on land that has buildings on. Who read those reports and thought demolishing half of Bedworth would be a way forward? I don't know what drugs they were on. Yeah, I've read the report, and the Arts Centre is, and the community is just coming back after COVID, yeah, the COVID thing. And you can see around Bedworth the volunteers and the community growing again. I went up to the Arts Centre, brilliant group up there. They're going to be devastated, yeah? The Civic Hall could be repurposed. We're coming out of a crisis, yeah? The Civic Hall could be a hub for the community, yeah? I don't know who read that report. Yeah, the schools, looks like they need some work. There's no money for them. Who read the report and come up with the idea that demolishing Bedworth, when we're coming out of this recession thing, this COVID thing, and decided that turning the centre of Bedworth into a demolition site for the foreseeable future was a way forward? It's going on across the country. Every town's got money to knock everything down, but no money to rebuild it. There's a shortage of building materials that we're having problems already with in this town and across the country. It's across the country. There's going to be no money to rebuild. The only money seems to be for demolition. Yeah, that's our Nuneaton town experiences from that. 150 million, all we've got is a promise to demolish. Where's the money to rebuild? There ain't none. But there's £150 million gone out of the public purse. That's, you know what I mean? The Bedworth community, from what I see, the market, I've seen their work on social media, pops over there a few times. They're really trying hard to push their little indoor market that they've got. Great little area. You want to get rid of that. Yeah, I don't know who came up with the idea that they'd have a clean slate and destroy all the buildings that were there. How can you get that from that report? I don't know. Nothing points to that. Nothing points to turning Bedworth into a demolition site for the foreseeable future. Nothing in that report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The whole idea of the regeneration is to regenerate the town centre. This is a visionary idea that's been put forward to be reviewed. Like I said earlier, it is not set in stone at this moment in time. It is just a vision, a forward-thinking vision. A lot of the properties within the town, as Councillor Wilson has said, are well past their sell-by date and would cost a fortune of money to maintain and to continue in its current usage. And that is why, as a council, we are looking to regenerate the town, to bring it forward in terms of its aspect and its age, so it's more suitable for future generations. Okay, we have a further speaker, I believe, Mr. Colvert. Is that correct?
Many points to clarify on this. Obviously, Councillor Wilson's made his comments about things that are being said that aren't being said. I would like to say, who is actually running the NBC? Is it the councillors or is it the officials? Because when I'm going through all these reports, there is so many contradicting information. At the main council meeting on the 9th, it said information would be released about what was be happening with the Civic Hall on the 10th. You looked on the 10th, there was a questionnaire, you filled it in, and the questionnaire stated, what would you like to do if you were a business to take over the Civic Hall? B, if you were a commercial community organisation. C, if we demolished it, and what would you like in place of it? Without realising or being told, that questionnaire has now been removed and a new questionnaire is in place, which implies that the option for demolishing has been removed, the option for a business taking it over has been removed. It is only available now for a community group. If that is the case, something needs to be done, because the council documents are all over the place. They're being dumped on the website with nobody being told that they are coming out. The figures contradict one another. Each document contradicts one another. In one of the documents it says, sorry, we can't give figures for private events. Yet last week, on the 1st or 2nd, a document was dumped that actually contained the information of how many people used it. This report in the Transforming Bedworth, who's wrote it? There's no author on it. There's no information as to when it was dated, so we don't know what the facts and figures are, and it contradicts various information that has been dumped in the public domain for the Civic Hall project. Nobody seems to know anything. It is all contradiction. I've showed this documents to various commercial partners that I'd like to work with on it, and they are saying it makes no sense. There is no running order. It seems the officials do not know what they're doing when it comes to this process. We need to have a proper information structure about what's being asked, because the 15 points in the latest questionnaire, some could be classed as illegal, where it comes down to NDAs, commercial sensitive agreements. GDPR especially is being breached in so many of these aspects. There is so much information that's wrong, and with a 2-week close down over Christmas, we're going to be really struggling. So the information is, we need to get things sorted, and if we are to do things, there is £8 million in Section 106 money. Why can't some of that be used to give the Civic Hall to the community to run it alongside the Transforming Borough Plan, which runs till June 2024? Run it alongside it, maybe £100,000, £200,000 to go towards the community to run it. Commercial partners can come in. I was at an event last week for 2 days. I spoke to 4 different event companies, and I had 8 levels of interest for it. That was just in 2 days. So what has been happening with the officials running that place for the last 5-10 years? If I can do that in 2 days, why can't we actually look at doing it? Is it been mismanaged? It sounds like it. There's an opportunity. We can go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cobley. I don't know if you'd like to come in on that at all, Dawn or Tom?
Chair, I can only reiterate what's in the report, in that these are concept plans to start this conversation and understand the art of the possible, and test out these plans with people who can invest. So that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dawn. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. To address some of those points, actually the consultation or expressions of interest exercise is completely separate to this report, Chair. I think it is misleading to try and bring that in, when actually what we're looking at is a regeneration project, potentially, or the visioning document to move that forwards. And I think it's also a complete fallacy to suggest that Section 106 money could be used to buttress the Civic Hall. That is completely wrong. What that would actually involve, Chair, is where there are elements of development in Bedworth, those communities would lose out on potentially new play areas, new road infrastructure, new education facilities, new health facilities, and other. The Bedworth Leisure Centre, for example, an element of that is being funded by Section 106 contributions that would be reached in Bedworth. And I would point out, Chair, that actually those facilities which are being supported by Section 106 funding, like potentially the Leisure Centre and like new play areas or upgrading of play areas, they have far more usage than the Civic Hall ever has or ever will likely have. You are looking at, the Civic Hall is lucky if it gets 400 people to a single show. How many hundreds of people use our leisure facilities across the borough? How many, there would be thousands indeed, Chair, who use the leisure facilities in the borough. There will be hundreds of people who walk through the Miners' Park who have actually had upgrades as a result of Section 106 contributions. There will be hundreds of people who walk through parks in their local area because there's been development nearby who will actually be enjoying those facilities. What is the point, Chair, of propping up a Civic Hall and it needs roughly £1 million, despite what the naysayers say, because it needs a lot of work doing to it. But we know that fundamentally the building is flawed, it is old, it is showing its age, it is hugely energy inefficient, it is just throwing good money after bad. In my view, what we are better off having is a more sustainable and viable Civic Hall in the long run, which is what these plans indicate we could have. And I actually think it's a shame, Chair, that lots of people in Bedworth have said, oh, Nuneaton's getting everything, which isn't the case, actually. That transforming Nuneaton is going ahead. What about Bedworth having some transformation? The moment we put some transformation forwards, we have a vocal minority criticising it. You can't win, Chair. And I think it's a shame that actually people are talking down an opportunity to regenerate Bedworth for the next 50, 60, 70 years.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Condacor.
I'd like a point of order. This is actually the public speaking section where the public can actually speak and we can ask for clarification. We've repeatedly got very long speeches from Councillor Wilson, who isn't even on the scrutiny panel. I don't mind people clarifying things, but the long speeches from the Cabinet members are for the Cabinet meeting, and this should be public speaking.
Chair, points are being raised by members of the public, which some may be in order, some are actually false, and I believe that actually scrutiny benefits from having Cabinet members put forward their views and the reasons why they're doing things, so they can help judge what the Cabinet is doing, rightly or wrongly. That is part of scrutiny. I'm just sorry that Councillor Condacor doesn't like it.
The fact that we have Cabinet members here to answer questions and assist is a benefit, and I will continue to use Cabinet members for that purpose. Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you, Chair. openness, honesty, integrity from this side, as always. But from the Bedworth people who are asking why can't we keep it down, we have been told and told them numerous times, finance and £800,000 a year of ratepayers' money, we feel and felt that was not correct. So that's why we put it on hold. No bulldozers. I know they keep being thrown at us, bulldozers. We haven't said until we have done this viability study, which we've had done by outside people. But the interest shown from the local people, we have then offered for someone to take it over. There will be no financial assistance from NBBC because our pot is empty, as we've said before. But if there's a businessman out there showing an interest that can give us a business plan to what they would like to do with the Civic Hall, with all its repairs that need to be done, and with the money that needs to be spent to get it going again, please carry on. As a business, Nuneaton and Bedworth can't afford it. But as a private business, if people have deep pockets to get it going, please come forward with a business plan. No one has at the moment. We are, till the end of January, waiting for the expressions of interest. The door is wide open for somebody to come with a plan. No one has at this moment in time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hammersley. Mr Colvert, you wish to speak again?
It was just
Is it relevant?
Yes, it is. With regards to Mr Hammersley's, yes, I totally agree. However, as I did point out, and this is where I'm hoping you will come out on our side, or my side on this, that when the questionnaire was released on the 10th of November, it did state, it gave those three options. That questionnaire has now been removed from the public domain. A new questionnaire has been released. And on that questionnaire, it doesn't give any opportunity for a business. It is all 15 questions are either towards a community group or members of the local authority employment. There is no way as a business I can complete that form. It excludes me. So that's that. And then the second point, I would like to ask that, as the Oversight Committee, could you challenge Mr Wilson, Councillor Wilson for misleading in his statement? He stated that you'd be lucky to get 400 people through the door. This is a document released as part of the Civic Hall information, and there is several events on here which state are private, well, there's mixed of private and council events. There is council events on here with 493 people in attendance, 386, 603, 644 people. That's just ones I've just quickly done. There is a list of 2 years of information which shows there has been 400 people going through the doors of the Civic Hall, both private and council. So to say it's lucky if you get 400, there's council events that had more than 400 people, right? Nearly 700 people. So to say that potentially I was misleading, but you saying you're lucky to get 400, that needs to be clarified, and that is a council document. So if I would ask you to clarify that, please.
Councillor Hammersley again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Mr Wilson would check with portfolio holder for the town centres, unless he would like to speak on that, but these figures have been prepared for him, and maybe he could give some clarification, but those figures have been presented by your members of staff and the portfolio holder, if I have it right. But one more thing, Chris, if you don't mind. The door is open. I can't remember anywhere the door being closed for a business approaching the council. Maybe we had the wording wrong. I haven't read the wording like you have. For a business, would we accept a business approach from this man for taking... I can't see why the doors should be closed on you. If you have a business proposition, I'm sure you would be listened to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hamsley. Would you like to respond, Councillor Wilson?
I hesitate because people don't actually like me speaking when I'm being asked about what the Cabinet's up to.
If we can keep it concise then to please our friend Councillor Condacor.
In terms of business, I don't see why that has been excluded. I haven't seen the form. I haven't read through the form. I personally don't see why business should be excluded so long as it meets the criteria of being able to have a sustainable and viable community usage that doesn't cost the council any further funding. So I can take that back and investigate that. I don't know why that has happened. Although I know that some communities have said that they think it should be reserved for community only and not businesses. The point about the occupancy is, Chair, we have I think it's approximately 760-seater venue. We do not sell out to capacity very often. I think an FOI was, in the last full working year, 2 out of 103 shows. That is actually very poor when you're looking at trying to keep a business going. And what we have to look at is a business model. And yes, there are shows which do go over 400, but that doesn't happen as often as it needs to or should do for the council to make it viable in the long term.
Councillor Cape, I believe you wish to speak.
If I can get it to work. Yeah, I think the point that was made about the questionnaire, I wasn't aware of that. And I think there certainly needs to be a consolidation of that information gathering and an explanation of why there might have been some confusion, just to make sure that it isn't preventing people from expressing an interest. I haven't looked into it in the same detail that you have, but I think it's a fair point. That's it.
Thank you. I think we should move on now to the next matter. Item number 8. Oh, sorry, Councillor Condacor, I didn't realise.
Sorry, Chair, we had public speaking and we haven't actually started the debate yet. I know we've been debating, but if you follow proper procedure, we should actually now be going into public debate, and I do wish to speak on the public debate about this.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think the fundamental flaw with the Transforming Bedworth questionnaire, and I agree with a lot of the public here, is that at the beginning, no one asked the fundamental question of which bits do they want redeveloping. If you ask the public, do you want development, do you want restaurants, do you want... People would all say yes, and I would say yes. But what fundamentally never happened is, the first stage of consultation should have been, do you want the car park redeveloped? Do you want the library redeveloped? Do you want people at action redeveloped? Do you want the old co-op building redeveloped? And also ask the landowners, because we fundamentally keep having problems with these transforming projects of deciding to develop bits of land we do not own. And then we have troubles with the post office or people in action or the Department of Work and Pensions. So fundamentally, the first stage of this redevelopment should have been to decide which bits need redeveloping or the public would want redeveloping, and also which bits the owners of the land want to be redeveloped. That would be a sensible step, and then we'd have a redevelopment that may be a bit smaller, but would actually just fly through because you weren't fighting landowners and you weren't fighting the public. I really liked the gentleman talking about car parks, because we fundamentally have the same problem in Nuneaton. Harefield Road car park, horrendously loss-making, falling apart, lots of running costs. Abbey Street, dead simple, it had virtually no running costs and made a profit. And we need to be looking at that sensible idea of, do we need a multi-storey when the land values, if you read the confidential reports or public reports, are incredibly low in Bedworth. The land is basically almost worthless unless it's next to something that generates footfall. So the first thing is we should have consulted on how big a development we want. Then we need to look at the confidential report, which I hope all the members have read, to see how viable the various bits of the development are. Because if you build housing or shops, that Section 106 money then has to fund the things you need, and the agreements you sign have to fund the building the new library or building the new arts centre. So it may be better to keep the old library or keep the old arts centre because you're fundamentally on a loss. I think the committee should be shown a map of where the council owned, and the same the public, and actually start this process again where we look at what can be funded, where can be developed easily, and actually develop Bedworth quickly, because we're not trying to do things that everyone's fighting. To actually do it with consent would be the most marvellous thing. And I visit Bedworth 2 or 3 times a month. I was there for the baton relay, standing outside People in Action. I was actually one of the marshals. And all the people in action came out to watch the baton relay go by. And you see how important these offices are for footfall. So I would love if we could keep as much as is viable and actually regenerate like the old co-op, which isn't. And I'd also like to point out, we're in a 90 to 100-year-old building. We don't need to demolish every building when it gets to 50 years old. The greenest thing to do is to refresh buildings, give them new plant and equipment, but actually not waste all that carbon and concrete and things in a really solid building. And the Civic Hall was built very solid as a building. It was just the kit has worn out. Thank you, Chair.
Is there any other comments? Yes.
Going through the Transforming Bedworth report, the 4 designs that are there, one of the aspects in there is at the rear showing the removal of the telephone exchange. Now, being involved in telecoms for over 30 years, that is not a straightforward process. The same obstacle came up in Stratford on Avon when they wanted to demolish the telephone exchange and replace it with a new building right in the town centre. What was found is there was no way that British Telecom, well now Openreach, could actually relocate a telephone exchange. It was a 3 or 4 story building. It has now all been condensed down into the ground floor and basement, with the upper floors now being converted into a Premier Inn. So they've managed to repurpose that. But on the designs that are showing on, I can't remember the page number, apologies, but it does show the removal of the telephone exchange. And I think it does also, from memory, mention the removal of the telephone exchange. Now, that can't really physically be done, in my understanding of the industry. So whoever has come up with these designs doesn't actually understand how telecoms infrastructure is taking place. I know we're now moving to the cloud, but we still need data centres, so there is an issue around that. So maybe somebody really needs, as Councillor Condell said, we need to have some support on this, because at the moment the report is only looking at around 1/3 to 2/3 of 1% of the people of Bedworth, of a population of 40,000 people, were asked in this survey. So we do need to take into account everything. And that's why I was mentioning about running things, keeping the Civic Hall open, because the report does say in the Transforming Bedworth that it is one of the 6 or 7 assets. The second one being the Arts Centre, which is also in the building. So if those two locations are classed as community assets, how can you actually turn around and work out what you're going to do moving forward? So maybe we need a working group that brings the community in with business and the councillors, where we can all actually work together on doing something and get a better set of figures and ask the questions, i.e., what would happen if the telephone exchange was removed? How much is that going to cost? And there's various things, like they're saying about the cost of the land. There's been various talks about the Corner Pin pub that has been knocked down. People have been saying that it's been up for sale for like 150 to 200,000 pounds, but when it actually goes to virtually being sold, structural engineers and architects come in and say there's subsidence issues, we'll only offer you about 1/10 of that money. Now they're the rumours. If that's true, there is a possible danger of subsidence that side. What's it going to be like on the other side when it comes to redevelopment? We need to actually go through this, and I know Mr. Councillor Wilson's been quite good in the latest news I've seen this week, where he's hopefully secured like 30 to 50,000 pounds worth of funding to do analysis and market research on Bedworth. Maybe we should actually start bringing that money to involve the community, involve everybody, so we can actually put something together. So well done, Councillor Wilson, on getting that money, but can we use the community and business people from Bedworth to actually put something together to make long-term things on it? Thank you.
In regards to the telephone exchange, I had a conversation with officers about this before whilst this process was ongoing, about whether we wanted to include that in the footprint of what we were looking at. And they said that we were informed that BT or Openreach, whatever they're calling themselves, are looking at their current business model and how they want to operate in the future. So there may be, and I emphasise the word may, be an opportunity to include it in there, which is why we put it in there, to see what could be done, not to say what would be done. And then if we were to have those further talks with them later on down the line, if it wasn't possible, then of course that element would have to be removed. This was just looking at, in an ideal state, this piece of land here, what could be done, then we go away and have those discussions with people. That's that one. And in terms of, you mentioned possible subsidence about over the road. Part of the next stage of work, if this goes ahead, is to look at a viability assessment in terms of the finances and more work about the land. That would be work which would have to be done as part of the due diligence. So if we do take it to the next step, that is what we would have to look at as part of that work.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other? No? Put forward then that this report is taken as read. Can I, thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Morton. All in favour? Oh, sorry. Against? Against. Thank you. Sorry, item number 8. Nuneaton Town Centre Development Update. And I believe that's you again, Dawn. Thank you.
It is, Chair. Thank you. So members will be aware of the Transforming Nuneaton programme and the objectives of that programme, which again is around diversifying the town centre and increasing the economy, boosting the economy, the visitor economy, the skills, and improving the transport infrastructure as well. The governance structure for this currently, which obviously there was a report that went to Cabinet last time, so it will alter slightly. What won't alter is the fact that there is a bi-monthly meeting with a broader group of members to give information on the progress of the projects, new projects that are being considered, or new opportunities that may present themselves, and kind of any risks or any issues that are coming forward. One thing that I think it is important to note is that a lot has been said tonight around kind of costs and viability, and we can't get away from the fact that we do have economic pressures, not just in this country but globally, and as part of the recognition of that risk and that impact on our programme, we are continually redoing viability assessments and cost estimates throughout all of the projects to make sure that we can deliver them, that we've got early warnings of anything that may cause us a problem. So in terms of the current broad initiatives, the Vicarage Street development, that's what we're calling it at the moment, that would include the proposed new library and business centre on Church Street. This part of the Transforming Nuneaton programme is being led by the County Council, and the final design works for the accommodation on there are being updated and ongoing, as is the feasibility, because the inflationary costs are kind of changing on a regular basis. Once we've got to a point where everyone is comfortable that it has caught all of the potential costs and increases going forward, we'll be able to put a delivery plan together that will detail how that will be built out. In terms of the Bridge to Living, we have, of course, spoken about that earlier tonight. It is around really trying to connect Riversleigh Park the George Eliot Memorial Gardens back through to the town centre. It will be providing some residential accommodation, but also retail and commercial space. So the planning application for that is due to be determined within the next few months. In terms of the Towns Fund projects, there was a requirement as part of that funding to establish a town deal board that had to have membership from a number of areas, including the private sector, education, the third sector, and so on. The requisite business cases have been submitted to the government and signed off. The projects are complementary to the Transforming Nuneaton programme, and as I've mentioned here, it's about converting redundant retail space, new homes, improving the skills offer, improving the cultural and heritage and leisure, various stages of progress. But the My Town Nuneaton website does have all of that information on there. The reports are taken to the Town Deal Board on a regular basis, and all of that information is available. In terms of the in terms of the Abbey Street site, we were successful in attracting a large amount of funding to support that site, including Future High Streets Fund, all of those that are noted in the report. We also were successful for Get Britain Building funding, and with that we have converted 22 Queen's Road, so the upper floor of 22 Queen's Road. That's been opened up, that's been let to King Edward VI College. It's a fantastic facility that they're really, really pleased with, bringing digital skills into the town centre. It brings footfall into the town centre as well. Since it's opened, that there is an obvious increase in footfall with all of the students that are attending there. In terms of phase one of the broader Abbey Street development, the works have commenced, as you are likely aware, around the construction of the Hampton by Hilton Hotel. The foundations are in place, and ongoing works now to provide all the other infrastructure that's required before you see that building actually raise out of the ground. It's everything else that's needed there. The demolition of New Century Way has commenced, and that's around phase two of the project. Phase two will deliver a cinema and leisure provision, a new food hall, a new public square, some limited residential accommodation, but also food and beverage units. The North Warwickshire and South Leicestershire College's Digital and Skills Innovation Centre, which will also include their culinary school, which is again extremely complementary to the provision that's going on there. There will be a multi-storey car park which will provide electric vehicle charging. In terms of moving that forward, we are at legal stages now with a new cinema operator and a leisure provider. It's anticipated that early in the new year we will have completed that process and be in a position to formally announce who those providers are. In terms of the future, there are pipeline discussions because the works that are continuing at the moment are not the complete ambition for Nuneaton Town Centre, and the partnership is actively exploring options to deliver further ring road improvements, particularly serving the train station, and further land assembly is going to have to be taken up around that area, and we are in discussions actively with Network Rail there. We have a table there of the funding that has been secured, and in terms of the that funding is there to both demolish structures that need demolishing, but also to rebuild these new offerings that are mentioned in the report, such as the hotel, such as the cinema and leisure provision, the college, all of those kinds of things. So that's contained within that. Again, I think it's important to note, because there is frustration, and I think we all would feel that, in terms of the pace at which things can be completed. A decision to do something is made today will take a couple of years to come to fruition, because there are so many legal obligations, there are site investigations, there's the funding. When we're talking about attracting private sector investment in, they have to go through their own discussions with their own boards for that investment. And not forgetting as well, it's a really challenging market at the moment, kind of nationally. For us, that's made more difficult because we do have lower land values, certainly in Warwickshire and certainly with neighbours. So it costs the same to build, but the return on investment is less because that land value is lower. So those are other kind of challenges that face us. But I would come back to the fact that we do have a robust governance programme to make sure that we're on top of everything. And again, to be clear, a lot of what we're doing at the moment does have commercial sensitivity, because it's around heads of terms, it's around costs and such. So there is limited information in terms of those kinds of discussions that we can put in the public domain at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dawn. We have two public speakers on this matter. Mr. Margrave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When some of the plans or ideas came forward for Nuneaton and they were described to me, I was very excited. But what we've ended up with is plans to tear our town down and turn it into a giant housing estate. We wanted more shops, not the good shops, closed. Local people haven't had a proper say on these plans, just like residents in Bedworth. In opposition, Councillor Wilson complained it was a disgrace that NBBC met in secret session and stated there is no democracy at the town hall. He promised change. Yet lots of decisions around our town centres are being made in secret, with a lack of proper scrutiny and accountability. In fact, this evening, I now understand that there's a report on the viability of various projects or public buildings, and that's kept in secret and not available to the public. So more secrecy from a council that promised transparency. There is still lots to be excited about, and I congratulate all those officers at the council and other agencies who are really making this happen. But the new structure that Cabinet agreed last night for transforming Bedworth was alarming. It just feels like councillors and local people don't actually get much of a say anymore. You're beginning conversations or undergoing conversations with developers and funders, again, before asking the community if this is what they want, and if not, what they want instead. Councils are meant to serve communities, not developers. So will the council commit to undertake proper consultations and hold public meetings and ask residents for their views before any shops are forced to be closed, and certainly before any more demolition takes place? Finally, the previous report says that overnight stays in Nuneaton and Bedworth are limited. That is not mentioned in this report, but shouldn't it be? And was the council therefore wrong to borrow £20 million of taxpayers' money to build a hotel that this committee has heard from the other report that very few people will want to use? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Margrave. Councillor Wilson.
Apart from the usual guff, which doesn't actually justify any response, what I would say is there is a flaw in Mr. Margrave's logic. He's saying that there is limited evidence to suggest that people want to stay in Nuneaton or Bedworth overnight, actually there's very little accommodation for them to stay in Nuneaton and Bedworth overnight, so there isn't an opportunity, so there will be no figures for that. But also what we should be doing is making advantage of our good links, particularly with Coventry and Birmingham, where they have an under provision of certain hotel provision, particularly when they have events on, and we are close enough to them to actually be able to match and meet some of their failure demand.
Yes, I would fully agree with that, as having been to many commercial and business exhibitions at the NEC, the difficulty is in getting accommodation locally for exhibitors who are travelling a distance. So Birmingham is obviously the nearest point of call, but we're not that far away in Nuneaton that we couldn't offer them accommodation in something like the Hampton Inn, which would be appropriate for business people, certainly going towards the NEC and areas that do the various shows and so on. I also have, where are we? Mr. Smith, I believe, as well, wishes to speak on this matter.
Right. There's a lot made of the A444, how good it is, and it's a car park, yeah, constantly, and it will remain so, yeah. So the transport links are shocking. There's no way around it. The amount of building that's been done around here, there's only so much room. The Transforming the Nuneaton project is it's not a viable, it's a disaster. The only thing it has succeeded in securing is demolition and closure of small independent businesses. It's £150 million of public money. All it has done is cut parking spaces, reduce the amount of people coming into the town. Just the small businesses in the area needed a lift. Martin's Pet Shop being the first of many victims, I have no doubt. What they're going to put there: cinema, leisure provision, a food hall, they've just knocked one down, a public square, they're destroying the fountain because they want one there as well. We're going to do a lot of standing about. Residential accommodation, there's a surprise. Food and beverage units. We've got food and beverage units that are struggling already in the town because there's nowhere to park. The ring road improvement, like I say, critical mass. You can't move that many cars any faster. With the crazy house building programme around here, it ain't never going to get any better, yeah? You just can't move that many cars around any faster. You know what I mean? And no parking in town will help. The economy at the moment, we're going into, a lot of people are going to be struggling to afford anything, never mind to eat at all these eateries and leisure complexes you got on about building or staying in a hotel. Like I say, building material shortages across the country are shocking, and it doesn't look like getting any better because this sort of silly project is going on all over the country. So there doesn't seem to be any money for rebuilding. This 150 million seems to have disappeared into knocking everything down. Yeah, but there doesn't seem to be any money to build anything back. What are you going to build? I can't see where the money is to build anything. They've only managed to attract £8 million worth of non-government money into this thing. Yeah? So where this £150 million gone, I don't know. Where they're negotiating contracts saying people are going to come in. Have they got any money to build anything with out of this 150 million? That's what I'd like to know.
Thank you for your time. I believe you was here last night at the Cabinet meeting, and I believe the questions you've been raising tonight are in duplicate of the questions you were raising last night. And I think you was quite admirably questioned, or answered I should say, last night at Cabinet. So you've actually brought in the same questions you did last night, and which were answered last night for you because I was watching it. Thank you. Councillor Hartshorn.
Yeah, I'd like to start by saying, in part, I do actually agree with Mr. Smith on a number of items. Primarily the transport links around Nuneaton. You're right, it's, you know, historically been underfunded, and the way that the town is laid out is not, you know, the best way of getting around the town. Let's be honest, having a ring road inside the town centre, just around the town centre, whoever designed the road system all those decades ago didn't have the foresight of what this town would grow to be, and, you know, the movement requirements. So I agree with you on that, and I do think that you know, it's a shame that we don't have the space to be able, or the means to be able to drastically improve a lot of the road rail infrastructure at the moment. I know Councillor Condacor and I share a similar enthusiasm for the Weddington station entrance, the second one, and the further improvements. I think it was a rail station that Stocking Forward that he was on about. That's recently been announced in the Midland Railway Hub. It's being consulted on, yeah, along with one closer to the A5 up in Hinckley. So I feel like that would go some way to addressing some of the infrastructure concerns. But again, we're working with historical infrastructure here. A lot of it, whilst it is you know, desirable to be able to alter these, and, you know, if we could, clean slate, just restart it, rebuild it, and that'd be great. It's just not possible a lot of the time. So we have to work with what we've got, and what we've got is a legacy, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Condacor.
Chair, assuming we've now gone into debate without proposing a motion and going through the proper procedure for yet another time, I will assume we're in debate at the moment, and we'd like to raise a couple of points. The first absolutely is governance. We said it last night, the Labour Party just don't seem to be providing any balance and checks, but we've got these cross-party working parties, and things aren't properly checked and balanced if we haven't got a decent amount of scrutiny. So I'm going to have to ask Labour again to give me their space on some of these when we do allow us to have some scrutiny, because we've just not got any scrutiny, and it's not entirely your fault. Yeah, but yeah, we do need cross-party to mean cross-party. Going into some of the details, I'm really disappointed the health centre seems to have disappeared. We've got the Newtown Centre that is always booked out by people having their blood tested, having all sorts of mental health, all sorts of great stuff, health related, is clogging up the Newtown Centre, and we desperately need more capacity for health stuff in the town centre as the population grows older and we've got more need for vaccination, all sorts of stuff. And it was on the maps, we'd have a health centre in the town centre, Abbey Street development. Absolutely essential we have one somewhere in the town centre, and it needs to be at the edge of the development, because the people who go to health centres need dropping off in cars and all this sort of stuff, or being next to the bus stop. So it was in the wrong place, but the health centre element is something we really need not to be lost from either this development site, or if it gets moved to one of the other, the Bridge to Living or the Vicarage Street. But absolutely key we get the health centre in. Secondly, on the actual detail of it, the EV charging hubs. We are desperate for EV charging for a lot of the residents who are fortunate enough to be converting to EV, but there's virtually nowhere that works. I think there's one charging point outside the council house. The ones at the back are mostly broken. And if Warwickshire is really pushing, and Coventry, to go towards EV, we need to have those EV things on a relatively early delivery on this. And I'm absolutely horrified to learn that we're paying to build a cinema. We shouldn't have paid to build the hotel at entirely our own risk. A cinema operator can come in, if they're just leasing it, they can go broke within a year with all the Netflix, all the changes, to actually have the council owning a cinema as a building and then taking 100% of the financial risk of the cost of building it is an absolutely suicidal thing to do. At least the hotel, we all disagree, I think they're building it too big, but if it gets some empty rooms, it might lose £100,000 a year rather than gain £100,000. You have a cinema you've paid to build, and the cinema industry goes pear-shaped, which it very well likely to do. You've ended up with a massive 30-year mortgage paying on a building that we own. Well, there's no way we should be taking the risk on some of these things. We should be at least sharing the risk 50-50 with an operator, so at least there's someone else's money in the game. To build a cinema at our risk with our council taxpayers' money is suicidally stupid. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Dawn, could you help us regards the health centre, etc., which Councillor Condacor has raised?
Yes, I can, Chair. Those discussions remain ongoing. We are pushing those hard. What we can't do as the Borough Council is force GPs or the NHS to locate their services within a single building. There are some complexities with the GP provision and how their business models are currently established, because they are in effect businesses as GPs. So there is an awful lot of work to work with the health service, the commissioning bodies, to come up with a solution that will make sense to GPs. We can't force them to come into the town centre to form a health centre. So and also it has to be remembered that the NHS have slightly different priorities, and we have to work out and get in step with them to get them on side. They are notoriously difficult collaborations to put together. We maintain those discussions. We are still taking it forward. It unfortunately will not be something that would be delivered within the next 12 months because of all of those complexities.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Just to add to what Dawn has said, myself and Dawn have actually had meetings with the Chief Exec at the UHCW as well. Now, it's not a promise, but it is a foot in the door, and I think that's more encouraging than something that we've had in the past. So we are still trying to build on those relationships, aren't we, Dawn, to see if we can encourage Professor Hardy, who actually is a local lad, as I understand it, to actually look at Nuneaton and Bedworth more favourably. I can't, as Dawn said, I can't force him to, but at least we've started a dialogue, which I think is an important step forward.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. With regards to the EV charging system, what is the situation regarding the new plans?
Yes, Chair. So they're being delivered alongside the Abbey Street development. It's Town's funding for that one. I'm just remembering which funding is covering which. With the county council leading on that, so those will all come forward. I don't know whether Tom's got a time frame. He may not, but those will all come forward together. So Tom, I don't know whether you can update that.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. It is Town's funding. I haven't got an exact time frame for that, the EV charging part of that, but obviously it's part of the Abbey Street development, which is scheduled to complete in 2024. So by that point, the EV charging hub will all be in place on that site. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Condacor.
Yeah, I'm quite pleased the negotiations are starting about health provision on the site. I think a hospital, either UHCW or George Eliot, will be great. But if we are going to get it, can we actually negotiate or talk to the transport people to where the bus route will go through the town centre? So actually we tie up and actually have health next to where hopefully we'll get some bus service up Abbey Street or whatever. Because we keep doing this, we keep not having things joined up. And this is an opportunity, if we do get a health provision somewhere on your development, to actually have buses and cycling and all the transport stuff actually linked in with the stuff. So I think that's important.
I'm sure we can take note of that transport systems would service the medical service. Yes, is it relevant to the
Yeah, it
subject
is.
matter?
It's just last week, as I do every year, I spend the last day of November, first day of December at Accounting Web, which has been for a number of years at the RICO. I'm very disappointed that the event is now being moved to the NEC on the 15th and 16th of November. The reason it's been moved is that a number of attendees have complained that getting to the RICO arena has been a nightmare with public transport. So they're moving it to the NEC because it's classed as much easier with coming from across the country into Birmingham International. But on the other hand, the exhibitors aren't happy that it's moving there because of the cost of the accommodation. And one of the things they liked about the RICO was the cheap accommodation around the area. They're not happy that you can never book into the Novotel, but they were also complaining about the factor that they're having to go down to junction 2 of the M6 to like the Hilton Holiday Inn there, or going over as far as the Long Shoot to stay, because there is not enough hotel accommodation. So with whatever's been done in Nuneaton, I think it's great having the hotel there. We need to look at more hotels around the area, because when I've spoken to businesses, that is one of the downsides. If you're wanting to come and stay, where is the best place to probably come and stay? It's the old Hinkley Island Hotel, it's been classed as. Or where is there decent places to eat? It's Barnacles across the road from it. That's like Hinkley. We've got nothing in Nuneaton and Bedworth. So having that thing with the hotel, we need to be looking at that, but also as part of this consultation to make everything more successful around Nuneaton, through into Bedworth and hopefully Bulkington as well. We need to see if we can actually really improve on the train infrastructure links, because not just Accounting Web, I've spoken to 5 other event organisers who are actually pulling out of the RICO to go back to the NEC, which is going to cost more money, just because they're having so many complaints about getting in. Nuneaton's not a problem, Coventry's not a problem, but getting to the RICO, that is the problem. Now that line, one junction up, is Bedworth, and then we've got Bermuda Park, which has got a hotel there as well. So something needs to be done, and I'm hoping that with this consultation that Councillor Wilson's undertaking with the Midland Hub can actually make more frequent use, and hopefully if it goes through to Leicester, that's going to pull more through to us as well. So hotels, accommodation and better public transport is what all the town centres need. Thank you. Oh, sorry, one other thing. Is this the appendix? Is that under the next item, or is this one? Next one, sorry.
Councillor Wilson.
I just wanted to clarify about the consultation that Mr. Colvert is referring to. It isn't a consultation we're running, it is a consultation by the West Midlands, and we are submitting a response in favour of increased rail capacity here at Nuneaton and Bedworth.
Does that answer your question effectively? Thank you. Any other discussion? Sorry, Councillor Conical.
I think, particularly with the cinema development of things being negotiated, I think we should ask for this to come back in 6 months or a suitable time, because there's quite a lot going on, and I think it shouldn't wait a year before we see this paper again.
Okay, we'll take note of that, and if you could bring that forward to us in 6 months' time or thereabouts. Appreciate that, Dawn. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your time. Okay, yes. We'd like to note the report. Can I have a proposer? Yes, Councillor Hartshorn. A seconder, please. Councillor Morton, thank you very much. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. We move forward to item number 9, Town Centre update, which is the addendum. And this is a report by Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, you've all had a copy of the report and hopefully had an opportunity to read through it. The report came from a previous meeting of this group where it was requested for further sort of details in terms of some of the breakdowns that were reported as a matter of course. It really sort of goes through and covers, in terms of the core information, the footfall figures in relation to Nuneaton and Bedworth. Clearly, the last 2 years have been very disruptive, and the figures, you know, are all over the place because of the impact of the pandemic and lockdown period. So it's been very difficult to sort of gauge against any figures for the last 2 years. As a consequence, a lot of the comparisons you'll find are against 2019, which was the last full year that we had pre-pandemic. It also includes information around how we stand compared to the West Midlands, East Midlands and the UK as a whole from GeoSense, and that's using all of the sensors that they have across the country as the basis for that information, and they prepared that detail for us. We have information in relation to further bits and pieces around footfall, dwell times, which is how long people tend to stay in the town centres, etc. Some information on ticket sales relating to our car parks, information relating to the number of stalls let in Nuneaton as well, and then finally just a little bit of information in terms of the commercial splits and how those compare with where we were in 2018 actually in this case. Happy to take any questions in relation to the report.
Thank you. We have a public speaker to start with, and then I carry on to question time. Where are we? Mr. Margrave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered on the issue of parking. I mean, first of all, I wonder whether the council will admit it's made huge mistakes, in particular in relation to closing the Abbey Street car park, causing significant loss of income. And in relation to the reason traffic hasn't gone anywhere else, or I wonder whether it was maybe because there aren't any spaces. The Conservatives also promised free parking in December and January and haven't delivered that. And they previously promised free parking entirely, and I wondered what the impact of that was on these parking numbers. And finally, I just wondered, I mean, sometimes when I come to council meetings just before 6 p.m. and pay to park, I feel like I'm paying down the deficit for you. But has the £1.50 for 3 hours with no 20 minutes or half an hour or no hourly rate put off people who would normally come in to pay money into the bank or collect something quickly from the town? And is that having an impact on parking income? And then where would those people go? Or are they still coming to the town? Because it does annoy me and lots of residents that we have to pay £1.50 when we're going to be here for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Margrave. Jonathan, could you elaborate perhaps or ask?
Yeah, I'll try and answer some of those points for you. In relation to car parking, obviously, again, we're in that very difficult position at the moment where we've had 2 years of nonsense figures because of the disruption that's happened. So it's very difficult to do those like-for-like comparisons. I think what I would say in terms of the closure of Abbey Street car park, obviously we've been monitoring that since the closure. I mean, we were monitoring it before. What the average ticket sales indicate is that we're actually retaining about 90% of those lost ticket sales, if you like, from Abbey Street into other car parks. The key one around that is 50% of that loss is going into Rope car park and about 25% or 20% into Harefield, and then the others really are dotted around. And certainly, if you've been into the town, recently you will see that some of the key car parks that are as near as they can to the town centre, notably the one at the back of the town hall here, and the Victoria Street car parks are busier than perhaps they would have been in the past. So we have seen a split across the other car parks, but predominantly, as you would expect, I guess the destination ones or the larger car parks where people know there's availability. We have got availability in our car parks still in spaces, and there are car parks that are underutilised, which is notably Harefield Road. Obviously, around Harefield Road, you have to remember that it is just over the road from 3 2-hour stay in Asda and the other shopping areas around there, so that clearly has an impact. I think one of the things that we are mindful of, and that we're looking for in terms of what we're doing moving forward, is the way that we actually operate our car parks as well. The machines that we've got are 15, 20 years old. They're out of date. They don't offer card payments. That clearly impacts upon, you know, the revenue in the long term, and that is something that we're reviewing at the moment. It also, we don't really have a protection against ticket swapping, you know, and that is an issue for us, and it's very difficult to account for the numbers that we actually lose as a you know, in regards to people exchanging tickets with one another, which is very neighbourly of them, but obviously isn't a great advantage to us, because it's one, it's skewing the figures, and two, obviously it's having an impact on revenue as well. So I hope that's sort of answered some of those points for you. No. People ask me on a regular basis to share mine, yes.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Councillor Wilson, are you there to answer a question, or is it open debate?
It's to answer some points which Mr. Margrave raised. So he is, again, lying about the offer that we put forward. We said we would do free car parking in December 21 and January 22 as a post-pandemic economic boost for our town centres. We did not say that would continue indefinitely, because the finances just do not allow it. I would draw his attention and the committee's attention to page 6 of the addendum, where it looks at the dwell time, which has been provided by Jonathan. So actually, if you look at pre-pandemic, the average dwell time was 134 minutes in Nuneaton, not dissimilar in Bedworth either, thereabouts the same. Post-pandemic, the dwell time has increased to 170 minutes. Now, anecdotally, a lot of residents tell me that that's because they're not clock watching anymore when they're having to rush off to go pay the ticket. They actually have more time to spend in the town centres, which is meaning that more people are spending money in our local businesses and shops, which I am sure we would all want to support. And just to build on something that Jonathan said about card payments, it is something that we do want to pursue, but one of the issues that we had when we came in was that we were locked into a 12-year contract signed by the previous administration with a phone company about paying on your phone. And that has meant that trying to go into ANPR, which would solve a lot of the issues that we're facing, it has to be said, that we were contractually obliged that we couldn't. It meant that we couldn't actually do that. We actually, if I remember rightly, at the start of this financial year, we served notice to quit on that contract in accordance with our break clause, and that is going through. And so Jonathan and myself are looking at options for ANPR in our car parks, which would see greater compliance, and those who are using our car parks should actually pay for that, because they do require maintenance on that, so they should pay for their usage. So that's a bit of the direction of travel that we're going in, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And just to update, do we have some sort of time scale regarding that? I know you said about, obviously, the clause, a get-out clause on the contract, but when will we likely to see a change?
In terms of the contract itself, it was actually a 20-year contract that we were tied into, yeah, which the contract was such that it wouldn't allow us to use any other form of card payment, so we couldn't put card payments on our machines or what have you, which is why they're all cash. That finishes in April, as the leader said, and then we're currently looking, we've looked through the frameworks, we will be looking at bringing in a solution to replace that in the short term, because I think it's important that we do offer some form of online or card payment full stop, which is the only option that we've really got at the moment, before looking at the scope for changing the machines. Ideally, what we'd look at is ANPR is, you know, certainly for the larger car parks, because I think it's more applicable and suitable, and certainly the compliance there is around 96% compared to something like 66% for pay and display. But it might not be suitable for all of our car parks. But what we do need is a system that works together and gives us clarity in terms of the information that we want, because that data that we're collecting, you know, it helps us shape and helps us develop strategies for the future of our town centres. And again, the information that we currently get is a bit clunky, it's a bit dated, so we just want to look at how we can update that as well.
Thank you. Any further questions on that? I shall open it for debate. question or debate?
Well, it's a bit sort of question and comment. The real key thing now is contactless cards. I'm really pleased we're getting out of this contract with these archaic machines from the 1990s. But everyone pays everything now, just tap. And so I really implore we go that way and we don't get people to type in license plate numbers on tiny keyboards, because the councils that stop people ticket swapping by typing their license plate in, yeah, with eyesight like mine in dark, it just doesn't work. But also the 3-hour issue, the sweet spot for parking is about 2 hours. Even if you had a 2-hour rate and a 3-hour rate that only differed by 10p or 20p, it would encourage the people going for those short hops not to get the 3-hour ticket, which is the problem is people feel real robbed when they go in for a short while and get a 3-hour ticket, which is why they pass them on so much. So I really do implore that we do have a slight tariff difference between the two. And also, can I ask Jonathan about the termination of the rope walk agreement or change, because we're giving free parking to Pure Gym, which is ridiculous considering our financial situation, but also we're not allowed to charge in other car parks less than is charged in the rope walk, which gives us a problem with differential parking between Harefield Road and the rope walk, which is what we need to get the Harefield Road filled up, is to have that more of a discount car park. So I think some of these issues need sorting out. It'd be good to have a proper forum about that.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Jonathan, would you like, or Councillor Wilson then?
I can actually inform Councillor Condacor, I've already had that conversation with Jonathan about rope walk, because I do feel it is unfair at the moment that there are people who are going to the gym, and some people actually use it to then go into the town after. Now, that's good, but I think they should be paying their way in terms of supporting our council and the facilities we provide. So myself and Jonathan are having those conversations already, but as I hope Councillor Condacor would appreciate, it's complicated legally. So we are having to try and work our way through that, especially as it's now got a new owner as well, which we've got to go through.
Yeah, that part is fine. And the other bit I spoke to Jonathan about before the meeting started was about the heat maps, which are really useful to see what's going on. Unfortunately, they're not in colour on our reports.
No.
But one thing I particularly noticed was a very poor footfall past Bedworth Market. And as it's now the only toilet in Bedworth that's easy to get to, I did suggest to Jonathan that maybe some signage, toilets and market this way and that sort of thing, would actually try and divert a bit of footfall. Particularly in this cold weather, if you're desperate for the toilet, you'll then find the market there. And so I think we could get more footfall with things like signage, just by people visiting, because the market's not that visible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Probably a valid point. Take that on board, Jonathan? Yes. Thank you very much indeed. Open it up for debate or question. We'll open up for public debate then.
With regards to, just to give you some information from my background, I'm involved in future technologies, and about 2 or 3 years ago I was involved in a project where I actually saw through 5G technology and solar power that you can actually dump a AMPR ticket recognition system in the middle of nowhere, which is powered by solar power, that can pick it all up. So that's maybe something you might want to also consider. There is also a new technology that's come out where when you come in with your phone, QR code, when you leave, QR code, that goes through to an app which could be done in conjunction as a white labelled Nuneaton and Bedworth project. I've seen that in operation, which is quite a good one, so that's information for you on that one. With regards to the sensors, I was just going to ask, again, what information have you got to produce where these geosensors are, and what information is it recording? Because I did notice, and I haven't been into Nuneaton for a long time, so I can't really judge about the ins and outs of everywhere. But just if I took Bedworth for an example, the location of the two sensors, I don't feel really pick up the information. So if it's not really properly picking up the information for Bedworth, what is it for Nuneaton? Because some people go into Tesco's and then they come out the other end, which brings them out by the Greg's bottom part of All Saints. So looking at the sensor map, that might not be picking up, but also how is that information being collected? Because if it is being done through GPS or tracking information on the mobile phone, I'm not sure if you're aware, and it might be worth raising with GeoSense if they are using this information, but due to GDPR and privacy issues, Apple have turned off the information on signal sending on their phone, so a lot of sensor information isn't picking up people passing it if they're using Apple tracking information because it's been blocked off. So it's only Android, so it can lead to a false set of information figures. And I know some other people have been picked up on that. And then one last point. So I'm a bit tired because I was up at 5 o'clock to go down to Banbury this morning. But I was down in Banbury with various business groups and talking to their bid. And it's quite fortunate that one of the things that came up there was the talking about car parking issues, and the feedback that they've got into the Banbury bid, and business owners have said that some people, if there's a problem, they just want to dive straight in, pick something up and then out again. And they would really value 20 to 30 minutes of free car parking just to nip in and nip out. And they're objected to like having to pay like 2 to 3 hours, which led to a whole debate on different bits and pieces. But that was the feedback from the residents there. And when you look at it, I think on population stats, Banbury's about 55, 60,000 people. Nuneaton's like 95, 100,000. So that might give you some insights to help you on further planning. Okay.
Would you like to respond, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can just come back on a few bits. Certainly, you know, we're open to look at all options in terms of the car parking solutions, and I think that the key element about it as well is that the existing systems we've got, because of their age, don't give us the flexibility to do some of, you know, the pricing structures and what have you that maybe we want to consider. There's just not the flexibility in those to do them and run them compliantly or effectively. So that's why we need to look, you know, urgently at these options to do that. So, you know, I've noted down here, particularly, I was interested in the QR code option, because again, we don't have to pay for tickets necessarily, so there's a cost-saving opportunity there. So, you know, we will review this and make sure that we do get the right option that's going to be there for the foreseeable future for us in relation to that. In relation to the footfall counters, with the sensors, there are, I think did I say 9 in, I'm trying to think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, 9 in Nuneaton and 2 in Bedworth. It is always difficult, you know, with footfall, it's not an exact science. What we try and do is cover the main entry points into the town centre in Nuneaton. And then what we can do as well is the system will allow you to actually understand where, not individuals, but the flow tends to go. So it gives us that, which is why we've got them on the core entrance points and then the high density areas. There's always room for putting additional cameras in, but obviously there's a cost related to that as well, or counters. In terms of Bedworth itself, you know, we were very interested in picking up the numbers going into the market and then the core in terms of All Saints Square. Again, you know, you're right, we could potentially put, again, additional sensors in there to pick up further information. But these give us a pattern, and that's ultimately what we're looking for. We're trying to understand what the overall patterns are, week against week, month against month, year against year, etc. So it just gives us some detail in relation to that. But yeah, thank you for your points.
Thank you. Any other comments, any debate? Yes, Councillor Connachorn.
One thing I forgot to mention earlier, we keep mentioning Victoria Street car parks, which are really busy, even in the evenings. I've been there twice recently for the Abbey Theatre and the Folk Club. They really do need safety improvements in terms of the, particularly if you go for that narrow gap from Queen's Road into Victoria Street 2, I think it is the first one. Yeah, we're not talking about tens of thousands of pounds of investment. We're talking about cutting the hedges back and making it feel a lot safer place for people to go off Queen's Road and into those places at night or late in the evening. So I can ask, can we actually just look at doing some stuff to make them more attractive for people to go into, because it is going through a narrow gap into somewhere that many people would feel uncomfortable. Whereas if you took a few of the fence panels out and actually started to make it feel open, it would really help the safety there. Thank you.
I'm sure we can take that on board.
Jonathan and I have already had that conversation.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wilson and Jonathan. Appreciate that. Thank you. In which case, we'll like to make note of the report. Can I have a proposal? Yes, thank you, Councillor Hartsell, and seconder, please. Councillor Cape, thank you very much indeed. In favour? No, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. So that was item number 9. Item 10 is the petition from Mr. Walmsley regarding the keeping of the lily pad fountain. An update from... Is Dawn still on? We have an update from Dawn, please, on that matter.
Yeah, Chair, I obviously there are questions that were posed. I do have some of that information. Clearly, all of the questions are not ones that I can answer. But in terms of the ones that I can, I'm happy to go ahead with that if you'd like, Chair. Yep, you want me to go ahead, Chair, with the ones that I can answer?
If you would, please, yes. Thank you, Dawn.
Yeah, great. So the first question was who owns the one view obstructed by the fountain property at Marketplace. We wouldn't hold that information. What direct revenue will MBBC receive from any letting of the ground floor of 25 Marketplace? Well, it's not owned by MBBC, so we won't receive revenue in terms of any lease income, although it is likely that NNDR would be payable on any commercial letting of that unit. Who will receive the revenue from letting the ground floor? Well, that would be the owner. Are the multiple upper floors of the property at 25 Marketplace let to tenants? How many flats is the property divided into and how many are let? I don't have that information tonight, Chair. The only way that I can get that is from the council tax database, and I'm just waiting for that to be produced, so I can forward that on as soon as I receive that. Did the current owner of 25 Marketplace purchase it with the fountain already in existence? I don't know that, Chair. It's not information that we would hold. What additional direct revenue income will MBBC receive if the ground floor of 25 Marketplace were converted into an outdoor dining? I'm not really clear on that question, Chair, because it's the ground floor. Unless they're taking the frontage out, it will still be classed as a covered place. In any case, we don't own it, so other than any NNDR that would be payable, there would be no benefit to the Borough Council.
Dawn, I think they would have to pay a pavement licence if they were to have to do that. If they were to have tables outside.
Certainly, leader, but that goes to the county council.
Yeah,
not to the
they
Borough
would.
Council.
I think it's important to put that on the record,
Sorry.
just so it's known and we're not seen to be hiding anything.
Sorry, leader. The following question about the recorded incidents and the question after that around Warwickshire Police records. In terms of the actual data from the police, they haven't returned back to us again once we've asked for clarification. Obviously, they are dealing with other matters and haven't been able to prioritise that. The information that I do have, though, is that from November 21 to August of 22, within the town centre perimeter, there were 300 and... Sorry, Chair, I just need to get that back up again. 320 incidents of ASB. What we do know for sure is that where an incident of ASB is reported may not necessarily be where it's actually started from. So I'm not able to comment on Warwickshire Police's records or how many they've got exactly at the Lily Pond Fountain. I can just tell you the numbers for the town centre as a whole. The following question about McDonald's is not one that I can answer, nor is the following one. The ones that I can answer would then be moving down to the question about how big are the brand new plazas which are being developed as part of the transforming Nuneaton redevelopment. At this point, there is one new public space really within the town centre. It's at the Abbey Street development site. The exact size of that is still part of the reserved matters planning application. So as soon as that is resolved, I can put that information forward. And then the following questions are not ones that I can answer, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Dawn, for that. There are questions I can see that are directly directed at Councillor Wilson. I've got down question number 10, I believe it is. Councillor Wilson?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think there are a number of other peripheral ones that I may be able to answer.
In which case, if you would do so.
As well. So there are no plans to demolish McDonald's. I think that's quite a ridiculous question or statement, to be honest. There are many sources of antisocial behaviour in the town centre, unfortunately, and this particular item is one way of addressing that. In relation to drug taking, yes, I have witnessed such events. I actually witnessed it at the fountain. Did I report the incident to the police? No, because they would not have got there in time to do so. And I didn't think it would be very polite of me to take any pictures for fear of risking a further altercation. And I think putting oneself into a potentially violent situation is quite frankly the height of idiocy. Yes, there are articles about health benefits, about running water, etc., etc. But there are also other competing priorities which this council has to look at, which include antisocial behaviour, public safety, protecting the highway, businesses, and also our budgets. In terms of public square, yes, there are other public areas, but if you look at where people tend to congregate at big events, they do tend to be around the fountain area. I would remind members present, just look at the recent Christmas light switch on when there was a hive of activity around that area, and indeed when it was busy people did struggle to get around the fountain, as I have pointed out before. It causes a bottleneck in places and difficult to get around. Yes, there are events there which are a matter of public record, so I don't see why they are what relevance they have to now. Do I accept that the council, that the fountain is not an obstacle for wheelchair users to negotiate around? Well, I've actually witnessed people struggling to get around, not just wheelchair users, but able-bodied people, for want of a better phrase, having difficulties getting around because it was packed in the town centre when we have busy markets and indeed at Christmas light switch on. So I have personally witnessed that. I actually think it's quite frankly insulting to say that Mrs. Isolan is a made-up character. I have no idea who she is, but I can confirm that I had an email off her. I don't go asking for their credentials when any resident emails me. She emailed me the question that she had, which I have to admit I was quite surprised by, because most of my inbox about that was from the campaign against the proposal, so I was quite honestly surprised. I emailed her to ask her whether she was attending to ask the question or not, and she said no, because she had COVID, which I believe Mr Walmsley also didn't attend that full council because he indeed also had COVID. But I think it is unfair to assume that just because someone disagrees with your point of view, they must automatically be made up. And I would also point out that I think it is an offence, actually, to misuse the electoral roll to try and prove someone is there unless you have a legitimate purpose for having access to that. I stand ready to be corrected, but I thought it was wrong to actually try and use the electoral roll in that way. I certainly don't use that when I look up, when I'm dealing with residents, whether they're on the electoral roll or not. I deal with them. Has Councillor Evans... I'll just deal with the last two, Chair. What action has been taken against Councillor Evans for his failure to adhere to the Nolan principles? As far as I'm aware, there's no complaints been received, so that would be a matter for the Audit and Standards Committee to do. I thought, yes, he is here. Councillor Baxter Payne on that one. I don't think he lied. I think he genuinely made a mistake, but he was right in terms of the principle that there is a cost to keeping the fountain going. And in terms of the last question about belittling residents who held concerns, I don't think he was belittling residents. I think he was pointing out, quite frankly, the sham of having a particular niche group, and I emphasise niche group, Chair, who were at the time, and they still do, saying that the George Eliot is irradiating babies, that the Bedworth event that we had recently with the Remembrance event, that was a satanic ritual, that somehow 5G masks are all irradiating our brains. He was referring to them, and I think he's quite right to point out the fancifulness of those claims and actually how quite dangerous some of those claims can be. And yet again, I'm not aware of any complaint which has been received for Audit and Standards to investigate. No.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Mr Walmsley, you pointed out a point of order.
Yeah, point of clarification actually. I did not utilise any public records or any database. That was an item that had been raised on one of the public forums, and it identified exactly as per the words I utilised. They were raised by another person, and it is not anyone who's in any political party. But obviously at this point I won't mention their name, but I can send you the screenshot from that forum of that person who made it.
Well, I accept at face value what Mr Walmsley has said, that he hasn't done that personally, but I have to state I think it would be inappropriate to use the electoral roll for that purpose. If it was an email which genuinely came through, I wouldn't look up that person on the electoral roll to verify whether they were on there or not. Not everyone is actually obliged to be on the well, legally they are obliged to be on the electoral roll, but not everyone does.
Mr Walmsley.
Previously, the council has stated that people have to provide their name and address, they are a resident of the borough before they can make statements at council, and as such you fail to do your due diligence.
Would you like to comment, Councillor Wilson?
Well, that would be the decision ultimately is the Chief Executive's as the head of paid service about whether to accept that. That's his function under the Constitution. If he's alleging that the Chief Executive has failed to do something, then, as I understand it, the complaints procedure can also be used about officers. I don't make the final determination of whether a question is acceptable or not.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. With regards to those last three questions, yes, if Mr Walmsley would like to make a formal complaint regarding any of those questions, there is a procedure that the council have for that purpose, and that will go to Audits and Standards. But if it's a misrepresentation of a non-existent person, then that would be a police matter and not a council matter. Thank you. I believe we have... Would you like to make any other comment, Mr Walmsley? Mr Margrave.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Sorry, I'm just in shock. I can't believe that the Leader of the Council said that he saw a crime and that he did nothing to report it to the police. I mean, soft on crime and soft on the causes of the crime, I suppose. But first of all, I did complain about Councillor Croft, so I'm a bit worried that that hasn't gone to the Chair of Standards, but it's probably with the independent person. I and a number of residents did complain about his slur on people with mental health. It was absolutely disgraceful. I can't believe the Leader of the Council supported it. Anyway, speaking about the fountain, the Leader of the Council, Chris Wilson, last night said at Cabinet that in relation to opposition councillors being on boards, he said that he didn't think it was appropriate for councillors to have a say on something when they don't live there. I mean, putting aside that he supports the councillors in Attleborough who don't live in Attleborough, why is it then appropriate for Councillor Samuel Croft, who lives in Arley, and clearly doesn't live in Nuneaton, to make decisions about Nuneaton Town Centre? Surely the best way to make the decision is to ask local people for their views and to have a consultation. Not a single councillor was elected saying they would rip out the fountain. Now, I've got mixed views on it, but I do have significant concerns about where people will be able to sit, to meet, and the impact on pensioners and older people and disabled people. I also dislike the fact that the issue is crime and disorder. Should we rip out anything that vandals can destroy, or should this council be doing more to use CCTV and to get the police to do their job in tackling crime? We have had a spate of antisocial behaviour problems and town centre attacks and increasing crime. What we need is more police on the street, a better response, not just removing a fountain, because that's not going to make anybody feel safer. What we need is the council tackling crime. Good people shouldn't lose out on town centre features because some criminal has ruined it for the rest of us. So instead of making this decision based on an idea from Councillor Croft, who doesn't live here, why not ask local people what they want and find a solution that everybody's happy with? You could put a survey online. There's lots of ways to do consultation. But it's about asking people. This council is not listening to local people. Even if they get the answer they want, which is fair enough, it's about asking people and dealing with things in a way that the last Labour administration didn't. I mean, it's nice to see a Labour person here. It's a shame there's no councillors here from the Labour Party. I haven't seen one in ages. They're more rare than a dodo. But the fact is, all I want is the council to listen to people. And this is clearly a contentious issue that I would ask the council, ask people about, instead of just coming up with ideas and saying, well, we're going to do this to you, we're going to do this to the town centre. We're not going to first ask you what you would like. That's all, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Margrave. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I did actually answer the point about why I didn't report the incident, because I felt it would put my own personal safety at risk. I think Mr. Margrave would be, quite frankly, idiotic to try and suggest that someone should put themselves at risk to report a crime. In fact, I don't think the police would even suggest that if you think there is a risk to yourself that you should intervene. And in relation to someone who isn't here to defend themselves, Chair, Councillor Croft works in the borough. He actually spends a lot of his free time in the borough. He believes he is a person of Nuneaton. And I would also point out, and I think it's relevant to put some of the comments from Mr. Margrave in context, he criticises people for standing in Attleborough, and they don't live there, yet he is pontificating about issues in Bedworth, but lives in Attleborough. So he is being, quite frankly, a hypocrite, Chair, in saying that. And he has also stood in Weddington, in Camp Hill, and in Bedworth seats, all at the same time, not even living in those areas, yet condemning those who don't live in those areas, but actually do far more for those constituencies once they've been elected, since Mr. Margrave stood down as a councillor. I know these councillors have done far more in 6 months for the residents of Attleborough than he did in 4 years, and they were never a hypocrite.
Thanks to Councillor Wilson. Councillor Condacor.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible we now talk about the fountain and the bench? Because Yeah, I think it's important. I don't know if you've got, if we're now having another speech from him first, but I think we do need to focus on the benches and the fountain.
Mr. Walmsley.
Thank you. Okay, so this evening we've managed to work out there's zero benefit to Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council for anything that happens with the single ground floor area that's not let at 25 Marketplace. We've also worked out that it's not owned by the council, so there's no benefit, although Warwickshire County Council might receive a few bob for some pavement licence. The ASB issues, we've learnt that there were 300 antisocial behaviour issues between November 21 and August 2022 in the town centre. However, the police records via my Freedom of Information Act said that there were 6 antisocial behaviour issues at the fountain. Therefore, we can categorically work out the issue is not physically at the fountain. There may be massive issues with ASB, but as already mentioned, that's for the police to be dealing with. And obviously that moves into the fact that Councillor Wilson witnessed an alleged event taking place but failed to report it to police. Regardless of being at the time and personal risk, he should have reported it to the police to have a crime record taken so that the police may in future act upon crime in Nuneaton. Now, moving on, he does accept the health benefits of the likes of running water. Obviously also accepts that we had huge events in the past actually at the performance centre that is there in front of the former Marks and Spencers. So we have all the necessary features there. There will be a new public space as part of the Abbey Street redevelopment. Therefore, why knock down a perfectly good fountain at this moment in time when we have so much upheaval going on in the borough? There's so many things going. I did ask a question about Councillor Kyle Evans claiming £10,000. Yes, I will make a complaint about those misleading items. Obviously, Councillor Croft belittling residents isn't very nice at all. And we saw it a little moment ago about people belittling people for raising valid concerns within the borough. Obviously, we need to think about the health of residents. This council has a duty under the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, which covers things like help improve people's mental health and well-being. Fail on that one. Reduce inequalities in health outcomes of the wider detriment of health. Also, there's issues with regarding the health impacts. We fall well behind the rest of Warwickshire.
Mr. Warner, your
I assume you're
time.
going to stop me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Quite a few points I want to raise. I mean, from the crime stats, it's about 2% of the stuff in the centre is actually directly attributed to this area. And as someone who goes through the town centre, more in the summer in the evenings than the winter, you do see a lot of people gathering outside Marks, outside McDonald's, and they obviously now have employed staff outside there. And the footfall diminishes as you go through the town, and then you get some people on the steps out below the mayor's parlour. There's various places people sit, and just removing an area of seating to solve antisocial behaviour will do absolutely nothing. If you don't change what the people are doing, nothing will change. And it's interesting, after the fountain was raised, to have a look at it, and there's a ginormous camera right above it on a big bracket. And so it's actually probably one of the safest places for crime in the town centre if we've got our CCTV operators there. And one of the good things the council is going to do, I hope, and I know you're looking at funding for it from the new thing, is get more time for the CCTV operators, because that is actually the thing that will solve the problem. And maybe when Councillor Wilson witnesses, he could have checked whether it was on the CCTV, because people need to feel safe in the town centre, and it's not because of the bench and fountain there, it's because there's a lack of CCTV and various people and never see a PCSO in the evening, etc. So I think demolishing the fountain at £40,000 is a very, very bad way of solving the problem. And what it does, and I don't care about the fountain so much, are the benches. Those benches are a point at which people meet. And because they're big enough that there'll always be space on one end or the other, it's a real focus point. And if you look at the George Eliot statue, there was a bit of benching around there, but nothing significant. You need there are odd bits tucked in the flower beds and things. But the benches around that fountain are the biggest, most easy to tell people to meet at. And so it is a congregation point. On a quiet Tuesday morning when it's drizzly, there might be a guy there drinking lager with another guy. And if you took the benches away, you'd be drinking lager at the next bench along. It is really a waste of money, I see, taking it out at this moment, where we've got so many more priorities, and that £40,000 could be spent actually fixing some of the other problems we've got in the town centre, sorting out some of the other areas that are a bit naff, and actually making people feel safer, as I mentioned earlier about the entrance to some of the car parks like Victoria Street. If we start to actually invest in some of these areas, I think we get a far better return for our money than spending £40,000 destroying something, which is a very backward step.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Any other comments on this item? Councillor Wilson?
To answer directly one of Councillor Condacor's points, we do actually have plans to reinstate some benching afterwards. So the benching isn't going completely. It's that there will be more benching put in once the fountain has been removed on that point. So the plan is not to completely eradicate the benches. And also there are other factors involved in this. So, for example, I believe it's approximately 40 years old, the fountain, or thereabouts. Yeah, 84, I think. It is starting to require more and more maintenance. There are workings in there which are going to be expensive to replace. Not expensive in comparison to somewhere like the Civic Hall, if you're putting them into context, which I agree that we should. But for what it is, it would be quite expensive. There's a lot of piping under there, as it's been explained to me, that would actually require some significant investment in the long term to deal with that as well as the cost that we do face from the antisocial behaviour that is there. People may think it's funny to put in the soap suds. It looks good on a picture, but it actually does have a realistic cost to us to have to do. Now, it's not much in itself, but the amount of times it is done, it soon mounts up, and that's time, not just monetarily, but in officer time, where I could be having my officers and funding being spent on issues such as Victoria Street, which I agree with Councillor Condacor on, and I have discussed with Jonathan about whether there's something we can do there. I do agree about that we should try and open up Victoria Street if we can, so people know it's there and it feels and looks safer. But if I've got officers dealing with that down at the fountain, they aren't dealing with that. And actually, one of the shocking things which came to my attention not long after this happened, this went through Cabinet, I was actually informed that one of our officers was assaulted out at the fountain. And I also have to consider that too, as leader of the council and portfolio holder. And it does happen. Yes, not all crime is reported, including the issue with mine. Stats alone don't tell the whole story. We know that there is far much more that goes on than just those pure stats which happen. So there is more that goes on in the town centre. And in fact, if memory serves, and I stand ready to be corrected, but this is information I was told some time ago, when you look at the Warwickshire Observatory figures, actually Abbey Town Centre itself as a designation has the highest level in terms of crime and antisocial behaviour in the county. And I think that we should be doing something about it. Disagree with what we've done, by all means, but at least we're trying to do something.
I think you raise a valid point, Councillor Wilson, regarding the fountain being one of them, obviously Civic Hall, etc., various properties, buildings, etc., that we do have around the borough, have got to a point of being, needing considerable amounts of money to bring them back up to spec, up to date, and in a safe working condition, as it were. So, quite correctly, as you say, spending that sort of money on a fountain that's 40 plus years old, or thereabouts. There's a big investment. Is it something we need to spend our money on wisely? Will we get our return on investment in spending on that, or will it be best spent elsewhere? Thank you. If there's nothing, sorry, Mr. Walmsley.
Yeah, question on return on investment. You've got no values of what it would cost to refurbish it. There is no evidence to say that it needs refurbishment. You spoke earlier in the evening about evidence, and if you go back even to Bedworth Civic Hall, you have no evidence of what the requirements are to meet legal standards. So your data is flawed. You should have the evidence of what it would cost if you're talking about things like that.
I think certainly from the Bedworth Civic Centre respect, there has been evidence produced regarding costings, as far as I'm aware.
There is no detailed costings about that. It is a work in progress. So that's why I know we're backtracking here, but that's what the viability assessment is for. So anything that we actually have at the moment is only ballpark, and what we need is viability to actually drill down into the nitty-gritty, to actually look at all the workings of the scheme in its entirety, and what would happen if, for example, we can't do, I know the example was the telephone exchange. If that part comes out, what impact does that have on the rest of the development and the viability and the financial workings out? So what has been given is just a very, very high level figure that isn't at this point entirely reliable and trustworthy. It's just a high level figure. What we need to do is a viability assessment to actually get down into the detail.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other questions regarding this issue? Councillor Condacor.
The outcome of this meeting, we need to decide what we're going to do. And I think one of the questions I would have is, do we need to do anything urgently? Is this fountain going in the next 3 months? Because that's what our bid says. Because I think we do need to ask the public more about this. And also, if you want to get the public on side with an alternative layout with new benches or whatever, I think you need to have worked up some designs so people know they're getting something back. Otherwise, it's just a loss. So I think it might be useful to either the council telling us if this is the final answer today, or if we can actually have some more discussions on it. And it'd be great if we could come to some compromise where actually people felt they were getting something better in return rather than just a loss. So I don't know what as chair you're going to say we're going to vote on, but I think we need some idea as to whether this is going straight away and there'll be going to be people protesting on the benches as they try and rip it out, or whether this is going to be another 6 to 9 month process where we can actually have a little group of people have a chat and maybe a proposals to what goes instead, or shall we keep it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. A second, just in my moment. Did you want to respond to that? I'm thinking with regards to more explicit design concept for that area.
I have already asked officers to work up the concept for after the removal of the fountain, so that is a work in progress and was dependent upon us getting the UK SPF funding, which we only had announced on Monday. Now what we need to do, and I think if Dawn is still there, she may be able to correct us, but myself and Jonathan were just trying to work out which phase of SPF it was in, because there are 3 phases, and the first one has to be spent by March 23 in order for us to get the funding. Are you able to confirm which one it's in, Dawn?
It is actually in phase 1.
So we have to have that money spent by March 23, otherwise we will lose that funding to government. Government will claw it back.
Is that correct, Dawn?
It is correct, Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walmsley.
We're talking of £40,000 here. If you delay the decision until after the new shiny plaza is part of the first phase of the transforming Nuneaton development, and then you could introduce whatever would be planned, you wouldn't be creating a hole in a construction site in the middle of the town centre whilst other parts of the town are undergoing transformation. It would be a sensible thing to do.
Councillor Condacor, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could have the new design go back to this committee, or even informally email to committee members, so we could actually at least have some comment on what was planned, so it didn't become one of these things that just happened and you see the fences up, because we don't have enough consultation on this, and I think if we are trying to get people to buy into the idea of removing it, we do actually try to at least have some people have a comment to actually just say that's good or that's bad. So at the very minimum, I think the leader could actually offer to at least email the members of the committee's designs for comments, because say otherwise it is just something we just get built and we get no sight, and the public get no ability to comment if it's a poor design.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Condacor. Jonathan, can we do that? Can we get the proposed designs forwarded to the members of this committee?
I would have to run that by Dawn through, she's responsible obviously for the SPS funding and what have you, and have those conversations. But yeah, clearly we'll come back to you on that.
Thank you. Councillor Morton.
Can you clarify, are we not here to actually scrutinise the decision to have it removed? I think the designs and what's left after that is another issue, surely. But it's the issue of whether or not it should be removed, which has already been made. And if we're not concerned, if we are concerned, then we should refer it back to Cabinet to reconsider. That should be the proposal. That's why we're here.
Good point. Councillor Wilson, was you going to comment?
Well, I'm not here to legally advise the committee, but it is within the committee's power to make a recommendation to Cabinet. What I would point out is, as I said, that if we don't spend the money that we have under the SPF by March, we will lose that funding. I think Councillor Morton is quite right that, to an extent, the final layout is separate to the principle of whether we remove the fountain or not. If the committee is unhappy with the principle of removal of the fountain, then it can refer it back to Cabinet. But actually, if it thinks that in principle it is acceptable and is needed in the wider scheme of things, then we actually need to get on with spending the money, because I would rather spend the money in Nuneaton and Bedworth than hand the money back to the Treasury. I think the money is far better in our community than in the Treasury's hands.
Thank you for that. Councillor Condacor, last comment, please.
I don't know if the money involves also paying for the replacement. What I want to do is make sure we don't demolish something without at least having a path to have a good replacement guaranteed. So I'm trying to get to some compromise where we actually say we won't fight it being removed because you're promising to give us this nice seating area which has all these characteristics. If what we're getting is we're removing it, but we can't tell you yet what you're getting, I think there's a risk we actually get something naff, substandard. So I understand the decision we're making is whether to remove it or not, but without having the understanding that we have a funded replacement that provides decent seating, particularly because if it is the meeting point, I'm really going to oppose it being removed without having the replacement guarantee.
Mr. Walmsley, last comment, please.
Based on that conversation that's just taken place, I would implore you, as an overview and scrutiny panel, there is zero benefit to Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. There is zero benefit to the residents, and you have to ask yourselves many questions about your duties under the health impact assessments that this council has signed up to, of what you're doing that will adversely affect residents. Therefore, I do implore you to return it to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walmsley. On that point, I think we need to take a vote with regards to accepting the proposal for the removal of the fountain. I think with the proviso that we see afterwards, we have overview and scrutiny on the design thereof, the replacement for the purpose of seeing that there's benefit left there for the community, as per Councillor Condacor.
And clarify that we've got funding for the replacement. So in the £40,000, we have actually got money to actually build something new.
Thank you. If we're happy with that, so proposal is to accept the condition or accept the removal of the fountain as per cabinet. Proposer, please. Thank you. Second. Thank you. All in favour? Against? Yes. Abstention? Thank you. Item 11, Integrated Performance Report. Steve, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Chair. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to continue your report. Thank you.
Yeah. I've just got 3 points to raise. The first one relates to Appendix A. On this occasion, as requested at the last meeting, a breakdown has been included regarding planning application performance with and without those applications that have taken an unusually long time to process. The main reasons for delays, I've been told, are stakeholder response times, negotiations with applicants, overcoming issues by redesign, for example, and the need to return to planning committee where objections are raised or more information is required, for examples. The next 2 items I wanted to mention are not included in the report. Appendix B, the Strategic Risk Register, I just wanted to mention the key updates that affect the panel or the risks within the remit of this panel. R4, Economic Vibrancy, a planned action relating to the supplementary planning document for town centres has been removed. R6, Arson or Accidental Fire, a planned action relating to fire and carbon monoxide detection systems has been moved to existing mitigations. And R8, failure to deliver the key elements of the corporate plan. References to the medium-term financial plan and the housing revenue account business plan have been added to existing mitigations, and planned actions to review the documents have been added. The final point I wanted to raise was based on a query that was received by, I don't think it was this panel, but it was one of the panels on the last round, relating to freedom of information requests and how many receive a holding or interim response. Well, the protocol is that where we receive a request via email, an automated response is sent. To put that into context, at the end of October, we received 402 requests, of which 400 were via email. So those are the 3 points that I wanted to raise. So if there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer or go back and get answers for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Just one comment. Thank you very much for separating out the outlying planning issues and bringing it a little bit more up to date, so we could see, what the normal day-to-day time delay is. Councillor Condacor.
Thank you. I think we started a minute or two late, so we've got about 12 minutes left. Just a couple of quick points. I really like those 600-day planning applications. I think it's 14, not to happen in future. So I think either the planning committee or this committee, maybe once every 6 months, we'll get a list of ones that have been outstanding for more than a year, just so we can start to see what's going wrong or who's holding these ones up. And there's 509 planning applications. 14 have taken what is effectively 2 years or plus. I think if the committee could mind to suggest either this committee or the planning committee get a list of those, not every meeting, but once in a while, that would actually help us get the system working better and get these long planning applications are really bad because people buy houses, say next to Top Farm, they look on do a search and they don't know a planning application put in 4 years ago still hasn't been determined. So I think we do need those, I say it's only about 14 that go to about 2 years. And secondly, on the risk register, I think we do need to actually add a new risk about the council actually going broke because, as I mentioned with cinemas and things, we do need to start to look at the worst case scenarios. And it is a realistic possibility if we build a cinema and the operator goes under, that we could actually end up having to tell the government we can't continue. I don't know, I can't remember the section number you were talking about last night, but it's a serious problem if we don't manage our finances well. Thank you, Chair.
Section 114, is that okay?
That's fine. So if we can look at that, point that as a risk, even if it's a low risk, at least people then have it on the register and actually see what we're doing to mitigate it.
Are we happy to take that on board, Steve? Is it?
Well, yeah, I can take it back to management team. The next review, I believe, is in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, I did notice. Don't worry. Mr. Margrave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought the process was that members of the public spoke and then people would ask for clarification of questions. And anyway, this whole meeting's been very unusual. Mr. Chairman, I know that, first of all, I just need to say that I know that Councillor Wilson isn't feeling himself. So I want to give him the opportunity to apologise to me and retract the multiple accusations tonight that I'm a liar. The Conservative manifesto online, which I've got a copy of, under showing our borough is open for business, promises free parking throughout December and January. It does not restrict anywhere in the wording free parking to only 1 year, so it's a broken promise. Now, based on the stats Councillor Wilson cited, the figures could show that people are not coming to use the bank or go into town quickly, and they're just avoiding Nuneaton and Bedworth altogether because in other areas you can go for short parking for free for 20 or 30 minutes. So I just wonder whether the officer or whether cabinet members or the OSP had looked at short stay free parking for 20 or 30 minutes as in other areas. And in respect of the finances, the council, as Councillor Condacor mentioned, I was going to say that the council is clearly on the brink of bankruptcy. And I wondered whether, if residents can expect a Section 114 notice to be issued, or will councillors promise that that won't happen under any circumstances? And before any Section 114 notice is issued, or any more cuts, will you scrap councillors' allowances? Because the government believe you are volunteers, and other volunteers in the community are working hard, and they aren't getting paid. And unlike some councillors, they even turn up. So if you can't afford to deliver for the community the services that you need to deliver, money shouldn't be going into councillors' pockets. And before you say, I've had them in the past, things are very different now. On the issue of finances as well, the hotel and cinema is being paid for by taxpayers. And I just wondered how much the interest payments are going to impact this budget going forward and what the interest payments were. Because while Councillor Wilson says he wants government money here, not with the government, Margaret Thatcher said there's no such thing as government money. It's taxpayers' money. So you should be doing what residents want and listening to them about how to spend their money. And I just would urge you to, again, have a consultation on some of the difficulties that you're facing and to let local people maybe make some really good suggestions about how to avoid this council falling into bankruptcy. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. A lot of what Mr. Margrave said is a load of rubbish, or as Judge Judy would say, baloney. He did actually claim expenses when he was a councillor. he claimed the minimum of just over £5,000 for each year, bar the one he was the chair of the Standards Committee, which was a bit of an oxymoron about having standards. And that was in the region of £7,000, I believe. And actually, in every single year of those budgets, savings were required in those years as well. The budget books speak for themselves, the minutes speak for themselves on that savings were required in each of those financial years. So yet again, Mr. Margrave is evidencing what a hypocrite he is. And actually, the allowances scheme, no one's ever going to win on this, no politician's ever going to win on the allowances scheme, no matter what we do. But if you add up the hours about what we do, we are nowhere near minimum wage. And actually, if we were to remove the allowances scheme, a lot of good people who could serve our communities would be disenfranchised from serving the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. That would be the logical conclusion of what he is proposing. And actually, it is not his decision or his right to decide what each of our as councillors' financial circumstances are. He has no idea what they are. What the financial responsibility that we have is far greater. And if you look at all the other issues he quotes, like school governors, I've been a school governor. The amount of meetings I do as a school governor is far greater as a councillor than as a governor. The level of responsibility I have as a councillor is far greater than a governor. In fact, I think I'm out every night this week as well as working a full-time job, unlike some of the people who are criticising us tonight who are quite happy not to have a job. And we will do our damnedest as an authority in Cabinet to ensure that we do not have a Section 114 notice issued against us. If I was to take every single piece of advice given me by Mr. Margrave in the 18 months I've been leader of this council, I would have multiple personality disorder.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And I agree with you fully that, I was a school governor for in excess of 25 years. Voluntary speaking, yes, and the amount of time spent there is nothing like the amount of time we have to spend here on the council and the council business, considering our residents, etc., and general concerns. Councillor Morton first, please.
Thank you. Mr. Margrave, can I just address some of the things you've said? It's quite disingenuous to call it pay anyway. We're not paid, they're expenses. And if allowances. And if you got £7,000 when you're a councillor, now let me tell you how much we get, backbenchers, exactly half that a year. Okay? You obviously don't realise, but that's a fact. So, given the fact that we don't get expenses for vehicles, any extra expenses for vehicles, communications, computers, attendance allowances, petrol, nothing. It's all included in that £3,500. So it's disingenuous, and I think it's appalling, and it's cheap. So thank you.
Councillor Hammersley.
Maybe before the Section 114 notice, then we should keep throwing £800,000 at the Civic Hall. It'll just speed that up a little bit, won't it? As the previous did. Thank you.
Point noted, Councillor Hammersley. Point noted. I think time is running out on us. If we move forward, we agree to note the contents of that report. Approved. Seconded. Take a vote. Thank you. I'm not sure where Mr. Councillor Condacor is. We'll take his vote when he comes back in. Quickly move forward to item number 12, the forward plan. If there's any additional, where are we? Page 170. Any comments to be made on that? And lastly, accept your vote to accept the integrated plan. Yes, thank you. Item 12, forward plan. Happy with that? And then item 13, work programme for this committee. I've had no request for any additions. Anything else on that basis? Councillor Wilson?
Chair, there's an item on there from April 2017 about the local enterprise partnership. They're actually being wound up or in the process of being wound up. So I don't know whether that is still relevant to this committee, but that's something that I've been notified about. I mean, we don't currently know what the new climate will be after that and what will happen, but it may be worthwhile focusing on the post-LEP world. Just an update.
Councillor Condacott.
Yeah, there's several things under the LEP, like the growth hub, so I do think we need at least one update to see what the transition arrangements are, and so we know that these things are going to carry on. So it might be worth keeping it on, but sort of retitling it transition arrangements or something.
Fair comment. I think we can change that and add that into the forward plan for this committee meeting. Any other comments? Well, I thank you for your attendance. It has been a long meeting, but I appreciate your time. Oh, sorry, Mr. Margrave. Sorry, did I miss you? Sorry, Mr. Margrave. I'm quite happy to return.
You've already taken the item now, so.
I'm quite happy to go back.
Yeah, I mean.
Sorry?
I'm happy to.
Just 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, very, very quickly, if I can find what I wrote. I mean, we're locked. Members of the public are locked in anyway, so I may as well participate. In opposition, Councillor Wilson complained it was a disgrace that MBBC met in secret session, and he stated there was no democracy at the town hall. Councillor Wilson promised change, yet we seem to have more of the same. The Cabinet should not be meeting in secret to discuss the future of the town centres. Those discussions should be in public for residents to have their say. Will this OSP, not Councillor Wilson, he's executive, you're the OSP, call on the Cabinet to stop secret meetings and ensure that not only can the public attend, but you as councillors can attend too, so this council isn't just run by 6 people behind closed doors. Thank you.
Councillor Cape.
Just on the overview of what's discussed at Cabinet, I'd like to point out that we are invited to attend either physically or by Teams, which the majority of us do. And even though I'm not a Cabinet member, I do catch up with the minutes, the videos, everything that goes on. So I don't believe I'm kept in the dark and some cabal making decisions without getting any input from us.
Thank you, Councillor Cape. And in all fairness, I watch the Cabinet meetings myself online. Councillor Wilson, the last point. Oh, Councillor Hammersley, and then Councillor Wilson.
It may be helpful before.
Okay, Councillor Wilson first then, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mr Margrave again is being disingenuous because he knows that under the previous administration that Cabinet members met to discuss policy formulation and how everything goes. The formal decision-making process actually goes through Cabinet. Every single decision that has had any binding effect has actually gone through a proper Cabinet meeting. Indeed, Mr Margrave was at that Cabinet meeting and spoke most vociferously and called a number of us liars and other slurs. So actually, the proper mechanisms are in place. But Cabinet is entitled to meet with officers to determine our policy and the way forward. That is how any Cabinet system and government works. It is then taken through the appropriate decision-making process, which is Cabinet according to the law, and every single legal requirement has been met. He's just trying to cause an SH1T storm where nothing exists.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Wilson. And last one, Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are encouraged by the Cabinet to listen in on all meetings and pass comments as we see fit, which we do. Thank you, Chair.
I fully agree and endorse that statement. In which case, I will close this meeting. I thank you all for your attendance.